I'm so honored to be able to speak at the summit, where I can share my experience as a woman, as a mom, and as a Filipina in medicine. I'd also like to preface that I am not a public speaker. Most of the time, if I am asked to speak, it might be a random grand rounds, but I don't even do that very, very frequently. So compared to other speakers of the summit, this may be a little less formal, so just bear with me. I'm gonna share my screen and hopefully that works. All right, do you see that okay? Okay, so like Christina said, my name is Dr. Catherine Roby. I'm a board certified anesthesiologist in Sonoma County, specifically Santa Rosa area. And in addition to working full-time, I'm also married. I've been married for 11 years to my husband, who's also an anesthesiologist. And together we're raising 3 kids. Our kids are ages 8, 5, and 19 months. Today I'm speaking to you about the work-life balance, or what I like to say, the tug-of-war, because this is a topic that I never really thought about prior to even starting my career. It's something that I'm currently living and breathing every single day. And it's a topic that's often really overlooked and something that no one ever prepared me for. With that said, when I struggled, I honestly had no idea who to talk to or how to manage. So I feel like it's really important to discuss this topic really early on, even before you're thinking about getting married or having children or starting a family. It's just something to already have in the back of your mind, so that when things do happen, then you can start to be at ease and start to be able to manage your life better. So let's see. A little bit more about me. I am a first generation Filipina American. So my parents were both graduates of the University of Santo Tomas. They attended medical school there, and then they moved to the United States, both for residency. So my older brothers and I were all born here in the United States. Specifically, we were born in New Jersey, but we moved to California, Sonoma County, when I was about 2 years old. I did earn my bachelor's degree at the University of California, Davis. And if that sounds familiar, I did in fact go to college with Dr. Manipad, who spoke yesterday. And I do remember her when we went to college together. Then I did earn my Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine at the Arizona College of Osteopathic Medicine at Midwestern University. And then I completed my anesthesiology residency at the University of Texas Southwestern, which is in Dallas, Texas. And then currently I'm in private practice. I've been in private practice since graduating in 2013. And I do everything from, general surgery, orthopedics, total joints, trauma, regional, spine, neurosurgery, OB, and then ambulatory outpatient surgery. In addition to practicing anesthesia, I'm also serving on the executive committee of my private practice group. I'm also a member of the board of directors of the group. And then I also serve in the House of Delegates for the California Society of Anesthesiology. I wanted to give you a little bit more background about my upbringing. I'm extremely grateful and blessed that I grew up with very, very strong and independent female role models. I still remember, my mom and my grandma always reminding me to make sure that I would always be able to support myself in case anything happens. You can't really predict the future. And I remember them always saying, just make sure that you never need to rely on anyone else. Like I said, my mom also is a physician. before she retired, she was full-time as a psychiatrist. And despite working full-time, she was still able to care for my older brothers and I. And it did always seem like she could do it all. And I think that this super mom mentality or ideology really gave me unrealistic expectations on what my life would be like when I finally became a mom, because I saw what my mom did. And to me, I felt like she was doing everything. So around the time of residency, I started hearing that term work-life balance being tossed around, which is nice because, you know, I've seen a progression of a lot of residency programs really being passionate and supporting self-care and allowing people to, you know, figure out ways to manage everything going on with their lives. But I do think that saying work-life balance is a inappropriate term on how to describe it, because it assumes that you can balance everything, that you can balance your work life, your social life, your family life, self-care. It assumes that they all have equal weight, but that's not true at all. The reality is that the work-life balance isn't a balance at all. It's more like what I like to say, a tug-of-war or a seesaw or a juggling act, where one thing will always take precedence over the other. There's no other way around it. There's no way to put equal weight on all of those things. And that goes from the time that you're in school and then throughout your career. Just one side will always be pulling you towards, you know, that direction or this direction. And this can happen every single day, and it can happen all throughout the day. So once I started accepting this particular mindset, that it's not balanced at all, I felt like the struggle and the guilt got a little bit easier. I can't say that it will ever disappear because that's just part of human emotion, but I did feel like things have started to become easier and more manageable. So what are ways that can help you to manage this work-life tug-of-war? I'm going to give you 4 examples of what I do in my daily life to try to help manage this work-life tug-of-war. The first is planning and prioritizing. So in my house, we use tons of calendars. I've got a whiteboard calendar in the kitchen. I've got another planner. I have my iPhone calendars, and I put down every single event that I know about. I put in my call schedule, everything, so that I can hopefully find out if there's any scheduling conflicts. And then if I anticipate a conflict, then hopefully I can already ahead of time request the time that's needed for, you know, a specific event. Even with all of these calendars and planners, I, you know, will always forget one thing here and there. And that's okay. That's just life. Sometimes it really feels like it sucks, but, you know, it happens. Can't be perfect, unfortunately. But in planning things, sometimes you already know that you're going to miss something, and there's just no way around it. Like you can't find someone to cover your call. So what I do is, you know, if we're allowed to, I try to designate someone else to go in my place. So I've had my mom or my dad go to my kids' events if I can't be there. Or if other, you know, family members can't attend, then I've had other school moms or dads send me pictures of my own kids when they're there at the event that I can't go to. Now, the next step is asking for help. Never be afraid to ask for help. And never make the mistake of thinking that you're alone or that you have no other choice, or that you absolutely need to do everything for yourself. Because in all honesty, asking for help is absolutely not a sign of weakness. It's truly a sign of strength, because you know your limits, you know what you need. And this goes for not just at home, but also at work. If you need help, never be afraid to ask for help. And if there's some important event going on, you realize there's a scheduling conflict, like a wedding or a family reunion, and sometimes these things happen spur of the moment. And you don't have the time off. Don't ever be afraid to ask, another colleague to cover for you, because they may do the same thing for you. And then the same also goes, especially for family emergencies. You can't plan those things, and it's absolutely okay to ask to postpone a test, to talk to your residency director, to try to get time off, to switch calls. Don't ever think that you're stuck and you can't get any help, because someone will always step up to the plate. Because we are all in this together. This goes with the next slide, which is recognizing that you can't do it all, even if you really want to. And I know that I do, in my daily life, think that I should try to do it all, but I also know that I have a limit. And some days are better than others. Sometimes I can get so much stuff done one day and then feel completely unproductive the next. I mean, just trying to prepare for this talk today, I thought I'd have so much time to plan and maybe even practice, but in reality, I had short intermittent periods of productivity because my kids really needed attention. So when people meet me, they're really surprised that I do work full time while having 3 kids. And what I tell everyone is that I'm very thankful that I have a lot of help, and I'm so grateful for it. That's why I'm saying that outsourcing, which is, finding other people to help with childcare or meal planning, things like that, it's not taking the easy way out. It's something that is very normal, especially for women with careers, working moms. There's things that we can do and that we need help with. So I've listed, in order of my priority, what things I outsource. Obviously, working full-time, childcare is a priority. We have a nanny, but this is actually the first year that I've ever hired a nanny, because prior to COVID-19, my parents were actually helping all the time with my kids. So we used to see them every single day because they live 20 minutes away. The second thing that's very important to me is figuring out how to get food on the table after working a really long day. So over here on this side, I'm sharing with you just some of my, fail-proof, go-to favorite family meals that I know that when I'm really tired and I, don't know what to do for dinner, I can just go with one of those. Third is something that I actually, believe it or not, just started doing is I started having someone come to clean our house once a month. And that has helped a lot with kind of the, managing the household, and it feels really good for that, first 20 minutes that the house is completely clean. I added laundry there because I have heard that some people also really love having a laundry service. But I try to do the laundry every weekend, all piles and piles of it. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about regarding managing this work-life balance, or tug-of-war, is to never compare yourself to others. That's something that we all have a hard time doing occasionally. Um, and it's something that we always need to remind ourselves of, to basically be true to you, to yourself, because only you are living your story. Only you are doing the best job that you can do in your life, and it's no one else's life except your own. I know that with social media, it's really easy to see how other people are portraying their lives, whatever they show on their social media outlets. And it's not fair to yourself to wonder how or why they're doing all of these things and you aren't. Because to me, you have to be who you are, and you have to be proud of who you are, and you have to be proud of your story. And if you continue to remind yourself that every day, then it becomes a lot easier to not look at others and compare yourself to others. So in summary, the work-life balance is not a balance at all. It's really a tug of war, like I like to say, or juggling act. And it is very, very manageable. Again, I'd like to preface that it's something that might be really manageable one day and still very hectic and stressful another day, and that's okay. Not no one day is the same. But if you always plan and prioritize your schedule and your events, you ask for help when you need it, you outsource if you need to, and if you remember that you are only you, that you are living your story, and that you are true to yourself, then you'll be able to really manage this work-life tug-of-war. The next thing I wanted to go over is, before going through questions from everyone here, is that Christina had emailed me a few questions already that that she wanted me to cover, that people may have submitted. So one of the questions was caregiver stress for Filipinos in healthcare. How does this impact mental health, burnout, self-care, and the family dynamic? And I think this is a very popular topic that's been touched upon quite a few times by fellow panelists. So I just wanted to discuss it in terms of my life as an anesthesiologist. So here are some examples of my work stress as an anesthesiologist. We do work long hours, early mornings. I'm usually at work a little before 7, and then a lot of times late nights. I work roughly 10 hours a day, but sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter. Sometimes the on-call frequency is pretty hectic. Sometimes I'm on call a couple times a week, sometimes not at all, and sometimes that can be very stressful. There's occasional increases in surgical cases, especially towards the end of the year, and especially now with COVID-19, because we have this huge backlog of surgical cases that have been postponed. Some days we have really fast turnover, meaning we have a lot of cases in one day and really no downtime, and that can be really draining and exhausting. And then also the complexity of cases. Sometimes we have really difficult surgical cases like neurosurgery or vascular. And then a lot of times we have patients that have multiple serious comorbidities, but just coming in for elective surgery. So we have to know how to manage those things. And then of course, the big stress of everyone in healthcare is the management and care for patients with COVID-19, and then our risk of even being near and caring for patients that have COVID-19. So obviously all of these examples can really impact our mental health. it can cause burnout from all the hours or the, exhausting days. And I would say that it does impact my self-care. To be honest, I feel like my self-care is very non-existent, um, especially having a family, and, coming home after a stressful day and then doing all the family stuff. I barely have any time for myself. So it definitely can, become very draining and exhausting. And sometimes I do need to take moments to really reset, and kind of help myself out of a rut. The next question that I received is, what advice would you give IMGs applying to anesthesiology residency in the USA? And since I'm not in academics, I actually reached out to some of my colleagues who are in academics, and they were extremely helpful. So I'll just read them off of what people had told me. If you have prior anesthesia training, then consider doing a fellowship or finding a research position first in the US and then apply for residency. Another anesthesiologist told me that good scores and really good letters of recommendation and personal statement are really great for applying for residency in the US. And then another had mentioned to strategically apply to residency. So find residency programs that have IMGs already, whether they're residents, fellows, or faculty, and who are likely to sponsor your visas. And then the last question that I was sent was encouraging Filipinos to pursue higher degrees and addressing the Filipino crab mentality. So I'm going to be honest, and I actually didn't know what crab mentality meant, and so I had to Google it. And then I was really, really surprised to see so many articles relating crab mentality to Filipino culture. So when I thought about it, because I didn't really understand it, I realized that my mom, being the strong, independent female that she was, I feel like she really protected me from this. I did grow up in a small town. There were about 8 other Filipino families that usually got together periodically, but we and we would get together with them as well. But we were only close to maybe 2 or 3 other families, and I always asked my mom why that was.
It's gonna be up next. I got it on my phone. You can watch it.
And I remember asking my mom why this was, and she only really barely touched upon it, but she basically said that not everyone is very nice, and she just doesn't want to be around that. So I felt like growing up with that mentality and having that, having been said that, I feel like that holds true for everything, and as well as always being true to yourself. So if you're around someone or a group of people that are bringing you down, if you're in any kind of toxic environment, then you don't need to be around that. Those people aren't going to be supportive in any way. And, even if, I've had a friend that was in residency that was very toxic, and she ended up leaving. She just had to. And sometimes that's what you have to do. So in terms of pursuing higher degrees, fill your life with people that inspire you, that support you. Find mentors that will help guide you. And, through social media, it's so nice now that you can actually find mentors or friends over social media. I mean, that's how Christina and I had connected, which is amazing. And if you're ever told something like, oh, there's never been a Filipino in this program, or never been a Filipino in this field or position, then that's where you say, well, then I'm going to be the first. So those were all the questions. Thank you so much for having me and for listening. You can find me on Instagram at Petite Doctor, or you can email me down below. I am on Twitter, but not really. So I just wrote it down there because sometimes I'm there, but I usually post really random things. I'm open to any questions. I'll stop sharing. Or do you want me to keep this up? Or?
Oh yes, please feel free to keep the slide up, and anyone is welcome to jump in, cut me while I'm talking, or like type in the chat what kind of questions you want to ask Dr. Kat over here. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing that. I love how you said that asking for help, you know, is a sign of strength, because often we think that it kind of puts you to shame, or you're almost ashamed to even ask for help because it can be like a sign of weakness. But I think at the end of the day, it really is a sign of humility, because you get to set your pride tends to get in the way when you're scared to ask for help. So I love that you just mentioned that during your talk, and how outsourcing, for example, is such a huge game changer. Because when I grew up in the Philippines, and often households will have a yaya, you know, or a nanny to help you out. But here it's so different, because everybody's so independent that you do everything on your own. And so things are just so difficult, especially if you don't have any family nearby. So I love that you encourage people to actually ask for help, outsource. You don't have to do everything. It's okay to have people help you out. I love that. I actually have a question for you, Dr. Kat. What was it like trying to coordinate with your husband in terms of, you know, scheduling time with kids, because you're both so busy, you're in the same field? What was like division of labor like for both of you?
Yeah, so I mean, now that we're both in our careers, we can manage our call schedules. In residency, it was pretty difficult. But at the time, we only had our oldest daughter, who's 8 now. And I think, he was actually in fellowship, and then I was in my second year of residency. But now that we're in our careers, we really try to alternate our call schedules. We, usually he requests his, weekend call schedule first, and then I'll see where, mine can fit in. We, for the first time, are in the same group. Even though we were both anesthesiologists, we had always been in separate groups. And so that actually promoted a lot of stress, because we had to work with our groups in trying to manage that. And that was very, very difficult. So it has been a lot better ever since we joined the same group, or he joined mine, technically. But yeah, we just kind of alternate those things. I will say that most of the childcare and the school stuff really ends up on my shoulders. So sometimes it is a little bit easier to do that, so that there's no confusion. So if there's like a parent-teacher conference, I know that I'm doing it, and things like that. He usually leans towards the sports side. So, if the kids have to go to softball practice, he'll do that stuff. So that's how we manage it. We I guess we divide it that way. Like, I do the school stuff and anything that he thinks is boring, and then he'll do like the stuff that he thinks is fun.
I'm also, Dr. Kat, in a dual physician household, but our 2 boys are 5 and 7, and he's also family medicine, and we both work in the same, in the same group, but we work in different medical office buildings. So the way that we divide it, same, like you kind of like have to play to each other's strengths, right? I'm like super type A, scheduled, like does he even know how to use Google Calendar? And your mind is like color coded with all the things, and so like there goes that, option out the window. But he's amazing. Like I am so blessed that he's like amazing with the boys. He does, like he makes their sandwich every day for lunch, but I put in the fruit and the vegetable in there, right? And then he does their bath time. He love, like we have the travel bug. We love to travel. And so he does all the traveling plans, and I, just like pack, like we just go. So like we that's how we divide our like stuff. Household stuff he's not amazing at, but I noticed I had to let some stuff go in terms of the way he loads the dishwasher.
Yeah.
Apparently no one knows how to do that. It's like a science, right? But in order for me to like release mental energy to do other things, I have to let him do it that way.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll still like rearrange some stuff in there to like get more things into the dishwasher, but overall, like I try to, let go of the things that, I need to let go of, because, it's like the song from Frozen, let it go. So, but yeah.
So I see one question from Tina.
Yes.
Says, how did I come to choose my specialty? So actually, when all throughout, even high school, college, halfway through medical school, I was dead set on becoming a surgeon, like 100%. You couldn't change my mind whatsoever. And I guess it was my third year, I guess, of medical school when we started doing clerkships and started thinking about applying. And my dad is actually a general surgeon, and I had just gotten engaged, and my parents sat me down and said, "Are you sure you still want to be a surgeon?" And I said, "Oh yeah, of course, that's all I want to do." But they told me that, because they know that I'm getting married, I might want to have a family eventually. I might not have the time that I want with my family as a surgeon. Not that, there are amazing, I work with so many amazing female surgeons. It's just, I think that my parents knew me really well. And then my dad also explained to me that, the culture in surgery, in a lot of surgery residencies, isn't as evolved as some other residencies. And he didn't want me to be in a situation where I'm in a residency where there's hazing, and where, people are treating me poorly, because he basically said that they could probably break me down, and I might not ever want to be a doctor. And so I had to really think about it, because I definitely cried about it a lot, because that was my dream. I couldn't see myself as anything else. And my oldest brother, who's actually 8 years older, he happens to be an anesthesiologist too. And so I knew that I felt at home in the operating room. And I decided that I should check out what my brother's doing. So at the time he was in San Diego, so I flew out to visit him, and I got to shadow him. And then I realized that anesthesia gets to participate in all the things that I like about surgery, because I didn't really know what kind of surgeon I wanted to be. I liked cardiac, I liked ortho, I liked peds, I liked it all. And in anesthesia, you can be around all of that. You can care for every patient, in every specialty, from neuro to cardiac to OB to peds. It's like truly the ultimate FOMO, fear of missing out. Like I get to see it all, and I get to see it all sometimes in one day. Like one day I'll do, a 2-year-old for tonsils, and then I'll put in a labor epidural, and then I'll take care of like a 90-year-old, you know, Vietnam veteran, you know, who has a hip fracture or something like that. And so it's actually pretty awesome. And I think that I chose correctly.
I love that you talked about surgery having this certain culture, Dr. Kat, because it's my brother back in the Philippines did surgery residency. And when I was an intern in the same hospital as he was, I saw what he was exposed to on a daily basis. So there was honestly a lot of abuse, verbally, and sometimes even physically, and almost feels like a fraternity. So I think you have to have a certain type of personality, and your priorities have to be kind of set when you enter a specialty like surgery. So I'm glad that you that your parents actually gave you the talk, because not a lot of people know what to expect, the culture, before getting into surgery. You know, they think it's, you know, it's cool to be a surgeon, you get to do all these cases, no one day is the same, but if you're going to do it for the rest of your life, you have to at least know what you're getting into and the kind of people you will be working with and what to expect. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Does anybody else have any questions for Dr. Kat? Please feel free to show yourselves on video or unmute yourselves. This is a very, like what Dr. Kat said, very informal get together. So this is a great way for everybody to connect with each other. So don't be shy.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth. I'm a pre-med from California. I wanted to ask you, Dr. Roby, how you dealt with or deal with guilt. I often find myself guilty for not, spending time with family or going to certain events, and then losing connection with some of my closest friends or seeing myself go on a different path. So I want to ask you how you dealt with that.
It's not easy. I'm not going to say that, I never feel guilty, because I probably have some form of guilt all the time. Like even preparing this morning when I told my kids, hey, I'm going to lock myself in the bedroom for a couple hours. And they gave me a really like sad puppy dog face. And I was like, well, it's really important, but we'll do something later, that kind of thing. But I'd say that one thing that I've learned, especially in this last year when we're all dealing with COVID-19, I used to see my parents every single day. And then when everything was shut down, I hadn't seen them for months. It's not easy, but because we have so much technology now that we can do, we can do Zoom with our families, we can do FaceTime with friends or family, even if it's just for a little bit, I think it helps a lot. And I mean, if you preface it with, hey, I know that I have to study later, but I just wanted to say hi. I just wanted to see how you're doing. I know that means so much to, other family members, even more than, not saying anything at all. With friends, I will agree that, especially when you're in the moment, which is like all of the education, all of the studying for every exam, you really kind of lose touch with people. But even with my best friends, that's how it was. And once you start, we would connect maybe like every few months or something. which didn't seem like a lot, but it was always very meaningful. And, the friendships still hung on because, your friends know what you're going through. They know they may not totally know how hard it is, but I'm sure by you talking about it or them seeing you, just, always saying that you're studying or saying that you have a test, things like that, they understand, they get it. And I know my best friends do. I've had the same friends for about over 30 years. And we have even lived apart, like in different states, and then now we're within 20 minutes of each other. We haven't seen each other since like January, but we still text and things like that. So that's what gets me through things. It sucks that you can't see them as much as you'd want to, or you can't be there. I've missed a lot of weddings. I've missed baby showers, and you just you know your limits. Like you can go to one thing, but then that means that you can't go to another, because you have to do what's best for you, and you have to do what your goals are. So
Thank you, Dr. Roby. It honestly feels really good, especially in this space, knowing that I'm not alone in it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Does anybody else have any questions for Dr. Roby? Still have a couple of minutes. Feel free to unmute yourselves. If nobody else has any questions, Dr. Roby's contact information are on the screen. Her email is also on there, and her Instagram. And like Dr. Roby mentioned, that's actually how I found out about Dr. Roby. I had been following her for like 2 years now, so there was no way I wouldn't reach out to Dr. Roby for this summit. So I'm just so glad that you're able to be here, Dr. Roby. I was worried you would be on call this weekend. So thank you so much for joining us. I really, really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much. Moving on to our next speaker is Andrea Cabrera Jakucs.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. Hi, Andrea. So I'm going to be introducing you very quickly, and then we can move on to your talk.
Okay, sounds good.
So Andrea Cabrera Jakucs is a Filipino-American entrepreneur and licensed clinical social worker who is passionate about wellness and deeply cares about providing the highest quality of mental health services for her clients. She received her master in social work from the University of Southern California. And she's an active member of the Filipino Wellbeing Collaborative, Historic Filipino Town Coalition, a board member of the California Social Welfare Archives, and owner of Wellness with Andrea Jakucs and Associates. Today, she provides individual psychotherapy to adults in the state of California, presents at conferences and organizations to discuss her work in the mental health field. And she also conducts group workshops or trainings such as mental health first aid, anger management, and dimensions of wellness workshops. In her spare time, she enjoys biking along the beach, snowboarding, and watching musicals. And you can go to her website, which is at wellnesswithandreajakucs.com.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Christina, for introducing me and inviting me too. Snowboarding. Danielle, yep, I miss it, can't wait. Let me put my screen here, share, and then let me do the presenter view. Okay. Does that work? You guys see me? Yeah, okay, can you hear me? Okay, I can't see the chat right now, so maybe I'll just talk and I'll see the chat. Yeah, so here we go, okay? Okay, first I wanna dedicate this presentation to my mom and my Lola. They're really two powerful Pinays, you know, since we're at the Pinays and Healthcare Summit, I figured might as well. They've really inspired me all throughout my life. They've been really great role models. So here's to you, Mom, and my Lola. So what's my objectives? So I'm gonna share to you guys my wellness journey as a Filipina and my work in the mental health field here in California. And really, I really wanna break the stigma of mental health treatment in the Filipino community. And I really need your support in doing that. I also, hopefully you guys will learn about wellness. You're definitely gonna learn about wellness today, a little bit about physical wellness, emotional wellness, and hopefully you'll be able to reflect on your own wellness journey too, as I go through this presentation. And just a reminder, so my clients did give me permission to share their stories. I'm just gonna quickly, briefly share their stories with you, but of course I'm not gonna share any other personal information. And just trigger warning, I'm gonna be talking about mental health. So if you need to leave the room, blank your screen, feel free to do that because I want you guys to be able to take care of your own mental health too. So if you need to grab it onto like a safety object or something that calms you down right now, feel free to maybe do that now, okay? So, hi, my name's Andrea. So I was born in Batangas City, Philippines. So I'm nagtatagalog po ako. Back then I was really skinny, as they say, payat. And then I also became chubby later. So I have some pictures here when I was younger. I just grabbed this today. So this is me growing up in the Philippines with my, I don't know what I was wearing, but with my stuffed animals. And this is me too at a birthday party in Batangas City, Philippines. And this was me, chubby a little bit, singing like the Filipino kundiman. I took voice classes, singing classes, and piano classes. I feel like it's like typical Filipino to do that, okay? So, and I moved to California when I was 13 years old. And I think at 13, that's like when my wellness journey kind of began. I didn't even know that I was already practicing wellness. So yeah. So what is wellness? Ano ba yung wellness? So wellness, it's an active process of becoming aware and making choices towards a healthy and fulfilling life. I highlight choices, like every day we make a choice. Are we gonna sleep in or are we gonna exercise? Are we gonna eat a salad or are we gonna eat ice cream? So every day we're making a choice. Sometimes we forget that we're making a choice, but every day we are making a choice. And also there's a lot of different definitions about wellness. So let me just wait, my chat. Okay, yeah, so cute. I'm seeing the chat, yeah. So there's a lot of different definitions of wellness, but these are the definitions that I like. Okay, this is from the University of California, Davis. And then this other definition of wellness is embarking on a wellness journey. It's a process. It's searching for the appropriate tools to make you a healthier and happier human being, plus discovering your own effective tools to use these tools for your own continued growth and development. So it's really about finding the tools that work for you to be well. And I'm gonna talk about those tools as I go on, okay? And that's from the University of Southern California, Santa Cruz. Okay, so this is really what I base my practice on. So I love wellness. I love this whole 8 dimensions of wellness. This is from the National Institute of Health. So with my clients in psychotherapy, I teach them like all these different dimensions. I point out to them that, oh, look at you, you're practicing physical wellness. Oh, look at you, you're practicing spiritual wellness. So this is what I do in my practice. I also teach companies how to be well. Like I go to organizations and do speaking engagements and also group workshops. But for the purpose of this presentation, I'm only going to talk about emotional and physical wellness. Okay, so what is physical wellness? So this is affected by our physical activity, healthy nutrition, and adequate sleep. Like sleep is very important. As we grow older and take on a lot of responsibilities, we definitely need sleep. Our body needs rest. And also promotes, physical wellness promotes proper care for our bodies for optimal health and functioning. And then these are the ways to maintain physical wellness. First is physical activity, and next one is eat well. So back to my wellness. So when I was 13 years old, I chose to work out. I chose to practice physical wellness because I wanted to lose the weight. When I moved here and I was starting school, I'm like, I don't want to be chubby in America. So that's what I did. And I chose not to have meals after 6 p.m. To lose weight. I think there was like a saying back then that make sure you don't eat after 6 to lose weight. So I did it, so yay. So my physical wellness journey began then, and I'm still engaging in physical wellness now. I work out like 4 to 6 times a week, from 20 to 1 hour, 20 minutes to an hour. I use this app online or on YouTube. It's called Pop Sugar. So they have like a variety of different exercises routine, from high intensity workout to Zumba. I mean, I don't know if they have Zumba, but I do Zumba too. And then they also do yoga, and they also have like Latin dance class. So it's free and it's on YouTube. So I recommend that if you're not using anything. And also exercise really gives me a lot of energy to do all the things that I do. Like I do a lot of things in my practice. So I really credit that to like exercise. Like exercise is like my drug, my secret drug to do things. And also I feel good after exercising. You're all like happy, like, yeah, I feel so good. And it really helps me cope with stress, because the more you exercise, the more you're able to manage stress. So really exercise. And remember, you don't sweat, you sparkle. So I like that one of my trainers said that. It's not sweat, you're sparkling. So keep that in mind. Okay, then emotional wellness. What is emotional wellness? It's the ability to control your feelings, your thoughts, and your behavior, your actions. And ways to improve your emotional well-being, it's get help when you need it. Again, it's get help when you need it. Okay, so for my emotional wellness, I actually had my first psychotherapy counseling appointment a year after my dad died when I was in college. So my dad died, unfortunately, like 10 years ago from a heart attack. And it was like very traumatic for me. Like it came out of nowhere. And at that point, a year after he died, I was in college by myself. I was in New York, living with my roommates. And for some reason, I chose to go to therapy. I don't know, I wasn't sure why therapy came up to my head. I just had this like weird uneasy feeling like, I'm not doing so well. And this sometimes happens with like grief. So like usually sometimes during the death anniversary of a loved one, the Thanksgiving's coming up, the holidays, the birthday of the loved ones, you feel kind of weird for some people. For others, they may not, but it does happen. So that point, I remember going to like my counseling center at Pace University. I went to school in New York, and I just like cried. So that was like my first experience with counseling. And also just going back, I think I went to therapy because I got used to asking for help in college. Like I remember I struggled in calculus. I was like a business major then. And so I was like, I struggled. So I asked for help for a math tutor. So it became normal for me to ask for help. So I really encourage everyone on this call to really ask for help. And yes, you can definitely go to psychotherapy for grief and loss, because that's what I did, and I'm still going to therapy too. And I'll talk about that too. Okay. And these are other reasons too that you can go to psychotherapy. If you're feeling stress, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling depressed, you're dating or relationships issues, it's hard to date right now. It's coronavirus. I have a lot of single friends. It's difficult. Like you have online dating, then COVID, it's tough. And also if you have relationship issues, you know, people are living in and working at the same space. So it's definitely difficult, and it's putting a strain in families too. You might be a caregiver for someone too at home. So definitely consider therapy. Uh-oh, okay, there. And then life transitions too, okay? Being a new mom, you know, that adjustment to suddenly being a mom. Suddenly being a caregiver to your parent. Planning a wedding. How to live your life during this pandemic. All these things, life transitions, can definitely bring up stress and new challenges and more, okay? Because life is a roller coaster. This is what I tell my clients. Let me move here, okay. Sorry, I'm just moving my screen. So sometimes in life, if you're, okay, there you go. Sometimes in life, you know, life's going up, your career is going great, you got promoted, which is awesome, like a roller coaster, you're going up, you're doing well, but check for stress. Like it might mean you have more responsibilities, you need to do a lot of things, you're in charge of more people, so that can be stressful too. Then suddenly life can also go down like a roller coaster. You lost a loved one, you're struggling at work or school. Really, I encourage you to go to therapy. If you're missing your homework deadline, you're struggling and people are noticing that you're not the same person anymore or something's different, like I really encourage you to go to therapy if you're unable to cope with school or work. You know, one of my clients, she told me that her anxiety got really bad that she had to quit her job. And my other client too, he lost his entire business because he didn't get the help right away. So there's definitely that big impact if you don't get treatment right away. Okay, let me move this. And then your symptoms can get worse if left untreated. Again, you can go to suicide, suicidal thoughts, hospitalization. And yes, there's still stigma about mental health in the Filipino community, but let's break it. And I really need your help in breaking the stigma with mental health treatment. Like if you're going to therapy, I encourage you to tell your friends, tell your cousins, if you're going to therapy and the reason why you're going. I encourage you to educate them to really help to break the stigma of why Filipinos go to therapy. And really, let's normalize going to therapy in our community. Let's talk about mental health treatment in our community. And again, it's okay to go to therapy. Your mental health is your wealth. It's your kayamanan. So really take care of it and fix it if you feel like mentally it's not right. And in my practice, I have seen a Filipino father. I've seen a Filipino mother, a Filipino older adult with a terminal illness, a Filipino college student, a Filipino immigrant, a successful Filipinx, and a Filipino healthcare professional. So Filipinos really go to therapy. Like I've seen them in my practice. I'm fortunate enough that I can speak the language Tagalog. So it's been really an honor working with our community, and I'm really happy that they are seeking help, and I encourage you to seek help. And I also want to highlight this book. This book really helped me in my practice. This is by Dr. Kevin Nadal, Filipino-American Psychology. If you want to learn about mental health and the cultural values in our community, definitely get this book. And I use this book in my practice. And me, you know, I also go to therapy. I'm a social worker, I'm a psychotherapist, and I'm an entrepreneur, and I go to therapy. I go to manage my stress, to maintain my own mental health to serve the community. And I really credit my wellness and my success. I credit part of my wellness and my current success and happiness in life because of my experience as a patient in psychotherapy. And I really encourage you to just go to therapy too if you haven't tried it, especially if you have insurance. Like, you should go to therapy, at least give it a shot. And if you're a mental health professional, go to therapy too. I consider myself, I'm a better therapist because I go to therapy. Like, I learned from my therapist. Like, before I used to call it panic attacks, but she's like, I like to call it panic peaks. So it's like the different use of words. And also, my therapist is white. Like, I love her, she's great. So this is my plug. Like, if you're considering, please consider being a mental health professional, a social worker, a marriage and family therapist, a counselor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a nurse practitioner, because there's a big need. I get referrals to do family therapy, but I don't do family therapy. So definitely consider that. And also, I want to give out a shout out for my fellow mental health professionals in this call, and especially if you're a psychotherapist in this call. You know, it's been hard providing therapy this year here in America. We had the racial tensions and also the pandemic and then the elections. So I really commend everyone in the mental health field for their work, helping people during this time while also dealing with their own, trying to deal with everything that's going on. So yeah, shout out to you. And this is just some info on how to seek mental health services. You can tell your primary care doctor, or also you can contact your behavioral health provider. So at the back of your insurance here in the United States, you can get your behavioral health provider hotline. And again, you can ask for a social worker, a marriage and family therapist, a counselor, and a psychologist. So all these people over here, they do talk therapy. And then a psychiatrist or a nurse practitioner, they prescribe the meds, just in case you didn't know. So yeah. And I'm also accepting new clients right now for adult psychotherapy. So if you know anyone in the state of California, feel free to reach out to me. That's my website. I'm in Pasadena, but I can see anyone in the state of California because that's where my license is. And also in Psychology Today, you can find therapists there too. And this is just the access hotline for mental health services in California. And this is, again, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. It provides 24/7 free confidential support or resources for anyone here in the United States. Okay. And I just also wanted to share this article. So this article, they did a study. The studies were done in 2002 and 2018. So the studies were conducted in the Philippines. Each study was done in Australia, Canada, Iceland, and some in the Middle East. And this is the results of the study that they found. So it's just saying here that Filipinos across the world were really reluctant and unfavorable attitudes towards help-seeking behavior, towards going to treatment, despite the rates of psychological distress. There's a high rate. We prefer seeking help from our close family and friends, which is awesome. That's okay for you to get support from your friends, and I really encourage that. But sometimes you need a professional to really help you and guide you. And that's where I come in, because that's where I'm trained to really help you explore and support you. And also over here, it's saying the barriers for Filipinos living in the Philippines. Yes, financially, it's unfortunate, but financial constraints, inaccessibility of services. And for overseas Filipino, there's the immigration status. So some might be undocumented or just an immigrant status, and also the lack of health insurance, the language difficulty. If you're in the Philippines and you can speak Tagalog, really consider mental health if you can, because there's really a big need again for Tagalog speaker and any other dialects. And again, discrimination, lack of acculturation. And again, there's that social stigma attached to the mental health disorder, the concern for the loss of face, the shame, and how mental illness is considered unacceptable. And I also want to highlight here, they found out that that Filipinos utilize special mental health care only as a last resort or when the problems become less severe. So it's unfortunate that that happens, but please try not to do that because it's going to be harder for me. It's going to take longer for me to help you get better. I'd rather you come in with like a mild, moderate anxiety than severe, because the recovery really takes a while. I would probably need to work with a psychiatrist and get you on medication. So just something to keep in mind. So please don't come in when it gets worse, when it's really bad. I mean, do come in, but try to come in earlier. Okay? And then for emotional wellness, just going back to emotional wellness again, this is the ability to cope effectively with life and build satisfying relationships with others. And ways to improve that, your emotional well-being, is really to connect with others. Like, I know it's hard right now with COVID-19, but really try to connect with others through social media, maybe Zoom call like this. It's really nice connecting with everyone here from all over the world. So yeah, really take time to do that. And for me, I want to thank these people because I have this really good relationship with these people. First is my husband. I want to thank him for my emotional wellness. I've had a crazy busy week this week. I was in several events this week, so I wanted to thank him for, really helping out and doing the dishes while I do my thing. So thanks, honey. And then my family for always supporting, my in-laws and my mom and everyone else. And then my friends for keeping me sane and letting me hang out with them. My sorority sisters, it was really nice connecting with them during the pandemic. My colleagues in the mental health field, I really respect your work and thank you for really collaborating. Then Eddie, I mostly work with Eddie in the mental health field. He's another amazing social worker and Search to Involve Filipino Americans. That's a nonprofit organization here in LA. So they do a lot for the Filipino community and I'm thankful they've helped me and I've helped them too. So it's a really great organization we have here in LA. And all these organizations that I'm part of, Historic Filipino Town, Filipino Wellbeing Collaborative, Pinays, California Social Welfare Archives, these people, Esther and Tina, they're not Filipino, but they've really helped me in my career. And my Trojan family, Fight On. And I'm just here to show you that, it really takes a village to be well. All these connections that you have with people and all those relationships, really nurture them if you're able to. These people, they inspire me, they motivate me, they push me, and they take care of me. And I spend time with them. So just keep that in mind as you grow into your journey as a physician or whatever you go through in life. Really continue to connect with people. And I want to highlight God too. So Jesus is my homeboy there. So helping me throughout this journey. And really, that's part of my spiritual wellness too. Like trusting in God and, so yeah. Let me see here. So again, wellness, it's an active process of becoming aware and making choices towards a healthy and fulfilling life. So let's make good and smart choices every day. And it's okay to have a cheat day. Here I am here with a bottle of wine. It's okay to have an ice cream every now and then. I tell that to my clients. Okay. But most days, really choose to do well.
Sure, I'm just watching a webinar.
Choose to do well for yourself, your family, and our community. Because we definitely need you in this world. You have a purpose. So try to be well, choose to be well, go to therapy if you need to. And I think that's about it for me. Salamat po and be well. So yeah. And I
Thank
think
you so much, Andrea. I loved how I'm sorry, there's dogs barking in the background. I really apologize for that. But it just goes without saying that no man is an island when you said that it takes a village to be well. Very often, I think as Filipinos, we rely on our family, especially me personally, I rely on my family more than my friends, if I'm being completely honest, because I feel like they know me best compared to anybody else in the world. And being Filipino, we're very family oriented. So I think it's natural for you to rely on your family. And can I also just say I'm really sorry that happened to your dad, and that experience for you was horrible, I'm sure, because I lost my dad when I was in medical school as well. And I wasn't there the moment it happened, but there's always a shock that comes with it. And I think just like with you, you're still seeking counseling for it. And up until now, I still haven't really fully processed it.
Mhm.
I think people should know that it really does take time
Yeah,
to process emotions and feelings.
for sure.
But yeah, that was such a beautiful talk. And you mentioned how, you encourage people to come in, earlier during their mental health kind of troubles, um, to speak personally, like to share personal experience. And I shared this yesterday. I told Dr. Vanya when she was doing her talk that as somebody in healthcare, which is kind of strange, even being like associated with me going to therapy was an idea I wasn't really okay with. I was just like, no, why would I go to therapy? Like, that's not something I would want to get into because I don't want to be judged, this and that. And I think there's so many things to consider, that people consider before they jump into therapy. There's a lot of fear associated with it, a lot of shame.
Yeah.
And I think at that time last year, I was also hesitant because I didn't know anybody here. I moved here on my own. My whole family was back in the Philippines, and I was going through anxiety, depression. But thankfully now there's like all these, technology is amazing. What a time to be alive. There's so many resources. But I wanted to know with your patients, how often do they talk about, them being uncomfortable with therapy before actually like having decided to go to you?
I think it comes, well, they we talk about it, but I think, I don't know, they just come in. I don't know, for some reason that's just yeah, I mean, they do ask questions like, what is therapy like? So I describe it to them. Some of them do come in, some of them don't. So I think it's just per person. And once they're in, some of my clients have said like, oh, I thought therapy was for crazy people, but I don't think I'm crazy, but I'm doing this. So yeah. So I do explain it to them, and they do have their concerns. And I think it's just, it's just about timing, and that person is ready for therapy, because therapy is hard too. Like, we talk about tough things. So I give them a heads up just in case. So yeah.
Absolutely. And Maria in the chat said, could you share the references of that quote under the results slide, or any other related resources to that statement?
Okay, I will. I'll share that.
And Dr. Manalo asked what your favorite wellness or mindfulness apps are.
I know there's Insight Timer, so I don't use it as often, but there is that Insight Timer. I actually have this book too. I like this mindfulness stress reduction book. I use this in my practice with my clients. So yeah, I was gonna do a little mindfulness towards the end of my presentation, maybe after all the questions are done.
Ooh, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
So good.
I love it. Anybody would want to ask Andrea, any questions or show yourselves, turn on your videos, your mics, please feel free to do so. Don't be shy.
Where is everybody? I want to see all you guys from everywhere.
Yeah, I think Christina, you asked me a couple of questions too.
Oh
before.
yeah, I sent them in the chat as well.
Yeah, so what factors led to me wanting to be a licensed clinical social worker? So I think me being Filipino and growing up, I saw some of my loved ones struggle with their own mental health. So that was kind of interesting for me to see. And I didn't know that was mental health already. Like, I guess we didn't have a word for it. I was just hear this person is sick. So I was like, okay. But I didn't think mental health. And then two, I also worked at a residential facility with people with mental illness. So that's when I got exposed. I got to meet social workers. And then I know I looked at different programs too, like a marriage and family therapy program in different schools. But when I looked at USC's curriculum about social work, and there's also that political piece, like advocating for people and services. Like at first I was like, I don't know if I could do that, but now I'm actually doing it. So that's why I did the whole social work thing, because there's that flexibility. You can be a social worker and work in government. Some of my colleagues do that, and also a social worker in business. So I like that part. And then how are you able to apply Filipino cultural practices to my profession? I was doing a group recently, and we talked about a term called lakas ng loob, which is like a Filipino kind of value or cultural value. And so I think I tried to just, talk about it in session, bring up those values in session, how lakas ng loob, yes, it's great, like it's awesome, you want to be brave, but it's also tiring, and it can be stressful too. Like constantly you're like, lakas ng loob, but I'm like, I'm tired to be lakas ng loob all the time, and it's stressful. So just keeping that in mind too. And I think with me, most of my clients are like Tagalog and Filipino, so a majority of them are religious. So we also talk about their religious practices. I've prayed with my clients in session if they want to pray. I do like coping statements with them, like let go and let God. So like let go and let God. So that's something that like, this comes up for me. What do you think about this statement? Does it work for you? So that's with that. And then some challenges I usually face as a social worker. There are definitely tough cases like sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse. Like this week I was talking about that with some of my clients, and these are just like really tough and sometimes graphic too, to take in. And it's sad. It's hard to hear these stories. But I commend my client, and I'm glad that they're really open to me to share that. I'm glad we're at that point in therapy. And for them to, like, one of my clients, like, it was her first time ever telling anyone that she was like sexually abused. So it's just, it's very tough. It can be tearful, very heavy after a while. So that's why part of me too, I need to go to therapy to make sure I'm like mentally be able to handle all these different cases. So, yeah.
Yeah, and as Dr. Roby was saying earlier, self-care is very important, and it's hard sometimes as, women and men who are in healthcare ourselves. We tend to forget to take care of our wellness, and it's very easy to take for granted. Unfortunately, we're so busy taking care of other people, especially if you're a woman and you have a family to take care of. Filipinos we're naturally very nurturing people. So we tend to put people before ourselves. It's something that we do naturally. But yeah, I love that you yourself admit that you go to therapy to be able to function for your clients. And I think I think that's the most sensible thing to do, honestly. What other questions that you have for Andrea? Anyone can type in the chat box or.
Hi, it's Vania. Andrea, that was excellent. Oh my gosh, okay, I know you can't see me. I just wanted to say that was an excellent talk.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I love hearing that you're in therapy because I mean, my therapist is amazing. And even though people have a tendency to feel like you have to have a real issue, like you have to be currently depressed or having panic attacks or something like that to go to therapy, like I go to therapy for maintenance, pretty much. Like just so I can, like, whatever built up from all of my sessions, like I'm able to process it and move on like the next day. But anyways, my question for you was, because I have a couple of patients who are Filipino where I feel like it's more than, it's not just medications. They need to be in therapy.
Yeah.
But, like, so they want someone who obviously is Filipino or speaks Tagalog. Do you know if there's like a database or like a website or something like that that kind of has contact information for Filipino therapists or psychiatrists? I don't know if you've heard of like therapy for Black girls, but they have a really pretty good like network where you can search in your area and stuff for a Black therapist. So I don't know if you know if there's anything for Filipinos.
Yeah, I actually started a Facebook group. It's
Oh, you
called
did?
Yeah, Filipino American Mental Health Professional. I've had it for a while. I'll definitely drop it in.
Yeah.
So that, and I'm also like in a network of like Filipino social workers. So you can
Oh, cool.
reach out to me. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Wait, what is it called? What is it?
Filipino American Mental Health Professionals. It's on Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vania. And we have a question from Angie Christie. She said, loving this summit. As a first-gen family and some friends still stigmatized talking about self-awareness and little less mental health. How would you advise to engage that conversation tactfully?
Yeah, I think with that, probably like one-on-one with a person in a private space. And just, yeah, I mean, it's it's definitely hard. Like if they are showing symptoms, like definitely reflect to them. Like I noticed, like maybe just talk about, catch up, then later on, like, subtly, and be like, I'm kind of worried about you. I noticed that you're not sleeping correctly. You're not like the same person anymore. Like notice the symptoms of depression or anxiety. Like I see that you're overwhelmed a lot. So really reflect like what you're seeing to that person. So hopefully that will work. If that's like, if they have a mental health condition, and just being really open too, like with your friends, like, right now I'm feeling down, I'm feeling sad. Start talking about your emotion, because you have to open up first, so everyone else will hopefully open up. So just be real.
I agree with what you said, Andrea, because like with me, for example, when I open up to somebody about my personal issues, I try and like gauge first whether or not they're going to be receptive to what I'm about to say, or if there's somebody who's opened up to me before, because I also worry about being judged even by my own friends. And so I'm very picky as to who I tell and what I say, because you never know, how somebody reacts and how it's going to impact you. Same with family. I think it's very tricky, especially with our culture being very conservative or very reserved. As you said earlier, that whole line of lakas ng loob, it's something that we need to kind of like carry as Filipinos. We always need to be happy. As Dr. Vania mentioned during the talk yesterday, we need to be happy. We need to be strong all the time. We are very resilient Filipinos in general. But you know, that line sounds cliche, but it's okay to not be okay, right?
Yeah.
And it's okay to talk about mental health, I think, is
Yeah.
basically what everyone needs to kind of be okay with.
For sure. Yeah, definitely.
Does anybody else have any questions for Andrea?
What else?
Again, feel free to unmute yourselves or show yourselves on the screen.
Maybe I'll just put my website, or yeah, I guess I'll wait for a question. Yeah.
Yes, and I'd love to also know that group, Andrea, that you were talking about, the Filipino American Mental Health Professional on Facebook. In case anybody else would want to check that out. But if nobody else has any other questions, and I'm sure, Andrea, people can reach out to you as well if they haven't come up with a question just yet.
Let me look at, I type up, how do I do this? These were the questions that you asked earlier, but I already went through it. And we have the mindfulness too, but this is my info. Again, I provide psychotherapy, wellness workshops, and also speaking engagement. And I'm also going to be launching pretty soon. December 9th, I'm going to do a wellness workshop for the holidays. It's a group workshop. If people want to sign up, it's going to be on my website pretty soon. And you can follow me on Instagram too, if needed. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Andrea, for your time. I loved your talk. It was amazing hearing about what you do, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Do you guys still want me to do the mindfulness one, or should I not do it at another time?
Which one? I'm sorry.
I was gonna take you guys through like a mindfulness exercise to kind of wrap it up, but
yeah,
it's
we could do that.
Okay, sounds good. So this is what I do in my practice with my clients. So it's a 3-minute practice to give you a little taste of mindfulness. So this practice really recognize how you're feeling physically, mentally, and emotionally, and it'll help you recenter yourself. So if you're open to it, just try to get comfortable where you're at. If you want to lay down, feel free. You can blank your screen if you want privacy or keep it open. So just really close your eyes too, or if you want to keep it open, that's okay too. So we'll begin. So right now, I just want you to inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. So just try to inhale and exhale as I go through this mindfulness check-in. Just go with your breath. So take a few moments to be still and congratulate yourself for taking this time for this meditation practice. Begin this mindful check-in by feeling into your body and mind and simply allowing any waves of thought, emotion, or physical sensation to just be. Perhaps this is the first break you've taken amidst the busy day. As you begin to enter the world of being rather than doing, you may notice the trajectory of feelings that you've been carrying within yourself. There's no need to judge, analyze, or figure things out. Just allow yourself to be in the here and now, amidst everything that is present in this moment. Just be in the here and now. spend about 3 minutes simply checking in with yourself this way each day. As you come to the end of this mindful check-in, again, congratulate yourself for doing this practice that is directly contributing to your health and well-being. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. Hopefully that was okay for everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was actually my very first ever mindfulness practice.
Yay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really like 10% happier. There's a couple different ones. There's Headspace, there's 10% happier. I personally like, what was the other one? I personally like 10% happier. I heard that in Headspace, or there's also Calm. It's just like always one voice, and you might like get bored of that. In 10% happier, you could choose different voices, so you don't get bored of like one person.
Yeah.
And I love it because you can choose to do like 1 minute of meditation. And then like I always, well, like when I did do it, like I need to get back into it now. Like I would always try to shoot for 1 minute. And then at the end of the minute, it says, okay, 1 minute has passed. If you'd like to go for 5 minutes, you may do so. And so I'd always get to the 5 minute mark and I feel like an overachiever at the end of it. So it's a really good one. And I believe there's a pandemic discount for healthcare workers, or if it's not free, if it's not free, there's definitely a pandemic discount for a lot of these apps that are really useful.
Yeah, that's great. I've never heard of 10% happier. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
so
you,
much.
Andrea. I haven't done it in several weeks, but when I was doing it more consistently, it's amazing. You have to get into the practice of it and make it a habit, just like everything else, exercise, meals and fitness and nutrition, all of the things.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you so much for sharing. And Andrea, I have found the link, and I hope you don't mind me sharing it in the chat. I was being a kind of...
Should I sign up?
Yeah. But thank you again so much for your time, Andrea. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay, up next we have Dr. Danielle Manalo, and I'm just going to be doing a quick intro before starting. So for Dr. Danielle Manalo, as a full-time family medicine physician for the past 12 years, Dr. Manalo gets to care for patients virtually and in person. Her day-to-day includes managing diabetes, high blood pressure, stress, and preventing disease. In her profession, Dr. Manalo and her colleagues are known for being uncommonly good at managing common problems. Outside the office, she is an overtime wife and mom to 2 rambunctious boys, world traveler, and wannabe chef powered by nutrition and dumbbells. I love that last line.
I'm hiding my dumbbells behind this stuff. So.
The floor is yours, Dr. Danielle.
Okay, well, let me go ahead and share my screen. Give me a moment here. How's my volume? Is it okay?
It's perfect.
Okay. I don't see. Hold on. I lost my screen. Resume share.
We can see your screen.
How do I see? I don't see. Okay. It's like part of it is covered by the chat.
Oh, okay.
Or do I just do?
I think there's an arrow on the upper
Okay.
corner that you can lower the chat.
Okay, let me do this. I think that will work out. Okay. All right. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, sounds good. Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you and welcome to our discussion of imposter syndrome in Filipino culture, why we easily fall in and strategies to climb out. As Christina said, I'm Dr. Danielle Manalo, a second generation Filipino American born and raised in Southern California. I am so between full-time mommy, overtime wife, traveling pre-pandemic, and wannabe chef and baker, wellness warrior. I definitely struggle with imposter syndrome more often than I'd like to admit. Both my parents immigrated to the United States in the 1960s, early 70s, and I've experienced firsthand how Filipino culture can sometimes contribute to imposter syndrome. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my experiences with you. So objectives for this talk: first, we'll share some definitions of imposter syndrome, identify Filipino cultural values that may contribute to imposter syndrome, and then finally explore some strategies to overcome imposter syndrome. Now, I can't promise to cure this in the next 20 or 30 minutes. It's taking me over almost 42 years to get where I am, and it's still definitely a work in progress. So pop quiz are more like rhetorical questions. You don't have to raise your hand, but I'd like you to think about some of the following thoughts and whether you've experienced something similar. So first, have you ever worried that people will find out that you have no idea what you are doing? Or have you ever believed that your success is due to external factors, for example, luck, or someone more qualified than you chose a different medical school, so there was an opening and they needed to fill it? Or maybe it was because your parents or someone else had some connections and that's how you got where you were today, or any number of external reasons outside of you and outside of your own internal qualifications. Or have you ever believed you're successful because you worked hard? And by work hard, I mean in a sense that you feel the need to work harder because you think your peers work smarter or more efficiently than you. Therefore, you work extra hard to keep up with a level that maybe will come close to your perceived level of your peers. If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone. So let's start with some early definitions of imposter syndrome. It was first described in academic papers by Clance and Imes back in 1978, and they describe it as an internal experience of intellectual phoniness. And they initially described this phenomenon in high-achieving women, but as we all know, this can happen in men as well. And it includes the fear of getting found out, which comes with an overwhelming sense of shame upon being discovered as a fraud. So fast forward about 50 years, and I can really identify with Dr. Katrina Ubell's definition. She is a master certified life and weight loss coach and also a pediatrician. And she offers the following definition of imposter syndrome: a description of a collection of your own critical self-talk thoughts. And these are often old habit thoughts that come from way back, from your family, from society, or just from your own negativity bias pointing out your shortcomings. And so when you put all of these elements together from your past, your family, your society, your extended family, you develop in a culture that with some values that can be multifaceted, can enrich your life, but then if left unchecked, can lead to fostering even more imposter syndrome. And she goes on to describe further that despite being well-established or experienced in whatever field you're in, you have these thoughts that your peers may work harder or smarter, or that everyone else is so well put together, and you become terrified of making a mistake. You become terrified of not knowing the right answer. And then your brain wants to collect evidence to support these thoughts. And then your brain will want you to use these thoughts as objective data. But it really is just a way for your brain to confirm the shortcomings you think you have, which may very well be true, but it's your thoughts about the circumstance and what you make it mean that contribute to your feelings, that in turn drive your actions and results. So I'm going to say that one more time because we're going to touch on it again later on. It's your thoughts about the circumstance and what you make it mean that contribute to your feelings that then in turn drive your actions and results. So as we know, imposter syndrome happens in women. And one example of imposter syndrome is a quote by Maureen Zappala. And she's a propulsion engineer. So literally, she's a rocket scientist. And she said, for years, I thought NASA only hired me because they needed women. Okay, so despite working in a world-renowned entity for 13 years in the 80s and 90s, she was still steeped in self-doubt. She continues, I felt underqualified and in over my head. I worked long hours to try to prove myself. I was too afraid to ask for help because I thought if I'm really as smart as they think I am, I shouldn't need the help and I should be able to figure this out on my own. So let's use that model I talked about with Dr. Christina Ubel. The circumstance is NASA hired her, right? That's a fact. NASA hired her. But her thought was that, oh, they just needed women. And so, she wasn't really good enough, but they just needed women. So they hired her. And so that led her to this feeling of inadequacy. And the action that came from it was actually more of an inaction. She refused or didn't want to ask for help. And that led her to the result of working long hours and constantly trying to prove, perform, or please those that she worked with. And an example that I'll share from my personal experience is that back when I was working with a life coach a few months ago, she had me do this thought download where you like write down all of this stuff. And I'm like awful at journaling, but so there was like bullet point sentences everywhere without concern for punctuation, grammar, and whatnot. And when we reviewed it, she pointed out one of the sentences there, and I said, I had written down, I feel like I am the dumbest person in the room. So she asked me about that and to tell her more about it. And so I did. I was attending a conference a couple of years ago, and I was in a room full of hundreds of women physicians who are, I think, mostly specialists. And I think there were also primary care physicians there as well, but they, maybe also had their feet planted in other spaces such as research, integrative medicine, or entrepreneurship. And so my thought was, I'm dumb. I don't belong here. And so from that circumstance of, yes, there are specialists and primary care doctors involved in other activities that are present on the conference, that thought led me to believe that I was subordinate and that I, didn't belong there. And so the action that came about from that was that I didn't really participate as much in discussion. And the result was that I felt disconnected. And so she asked me to take a look at that experience again and maybe choose a different thought. And so the thought that maybe I could have chosen, because, you have options, all of your thoughts are optional and you have the power to choose your thoughts. And so if I had chosen the thought, wow, I am surrounded by strong, involved women physicians. From that thought, I get more of a feeling of wonder, of curiosity, of inspiration. And then from that feeling, the action can then be lean towards engagement, asking more questions and participating more in discussion, leading to a result of stronger connection. So that was, my example of imposter syndrome a couple years back. So we know, imposter syndrome happens in women, it happens in healthcare. There was a study in 2016 that found that a quarter of male medical students and nearly half of female medical students, so more, like double that of men, experience imposter syndrome and report burnout components of exhaustion, cynicism, emotional exhaustion, and depersonalization. So here we are, double whammy, right? We are women and we are in healthcare. And if you want to add another thing to it and make it a trifecta, we're Filipino, right? Studies have shown that imposter syndrome is higher in ethnic minority groups. Why? I don't know the answer to that, but it's probably multifactorial. So let's review some Filipino values here. There's education, there's family, there's respect for elders, there's respect for elders and authority, there's hospitality, work ethic and religion. And I know a lot of the other speakers had touched on a lot of these throughout their talks, right? This is definitely not an exhaustive list, nor is it solely exclusive to Filipinos only, right? We share this rich group of values that prioritize these topics. And two additional ones that I'll go into more detail are utang na loob and hiya. So utang na loob is loosely translated to a debt from within. It's this overwhelming sense of gratitude and indebtedness, a debt that can never be repaid, or sometimes even you might consider it as a lifelong debt. And many first generation immigrants send money back to their families back home, not only to their parents, but often also to siblings and distant relatives who are less fortunate. And it's this sense of gratitude and indebtedness that fuels the desire to regularly give, because through the hard work and sacrifice of your benefactors, you have now this abundance of education and now income, however meager you may perceive it to be, it's more bountiful in the eyes of those at home. And of course, this is a beautiful gesture and generous gesture, right? But there's another facet to this construct. Sometimes it can lead to blind loyalty. You may feel like you owe your income, you owe your obedience, you owe your blind loyalty, you owe your decisions to those who've sacrificed and provided for you. So in turn, this is your sacrifice to repay the debt. A personal example I will share is in my first marriage. Yes, I'm going to go there. One in which I jumped too soon. My husband was Filipino. He was a cardiologist, and both of his parents were doctors, right? He looked amazing on paper. And our wedding was mostly guests from his family because, you know, they invested a lot towards the expenses. So who was I to say anything about my own wedding? And clearly it was not my wedding. It was their wedding, right? Maybe that should have been a red flag, but I definitely realized too late that I jumped in too soon and married someone whose core values were not in line with my own. I felt, though, that I owed my compliance to my in-laws, to my parents, to my husband, to my religion to stay. And my utang na loob pressured me to change my name, put 100% of my income into a joint account, and be redirected towards acting like a lady or acting like a wife according to definitions that were far from my own. And to clarify, none of these things are wrong. Okay, just as long as both parties consent to that type of arrangement, that's cool. But if not, then there's a problem, right? So he went so far as to ask me one day, who do you think is in charge of the finances? Silly me. I thought, thinking that we were both doctors, I answered, both of us. He corrected me. He said, no, the husband is in charge of the finances and the wife will be in charge of the household and the children. And then when we have kids, you can go part-time. Jaw drop, crickets. I was like, does he know who he is talking to? Like, does he not see that we are both physicians? Does he not know that we can both work and that we can both parent and, you know, and not have to divide it that way? Clearly, we rushed through that section of roles and expectations in the engagement workshop that, you know, you're required to do in Catholicism. But long story short, that marriage wasn't long for this world. I'm reminded of another life coach, Simone Soul, who happens to be the first non-white life coach who just made $1 million doing this business last week, who said that the pain of betraying myself was greater than the pain of being rejected by others. And so when that scale tips, you are moved to action. So even though I was terrified of telling my parents, my dad, who is a deacon, right? I did it anyways. And I eventually remarried to someone who shares and upholds our shared core values. And now I have this utang na loob to my husband, And I show it through my love language of acts of service, cooking, which incidentally I found that I discovered I enjoyed and could be actually really good at after I got divorced from someone who expected a meal on the table every night after work. And then after I discovered I enjoy being in the kitchen, I discovered baking, and then the pandemic started, and this low carb mama discovered sourdough, and the rest is history. So that is, my example of utang na loob. Another facet of Filipino culture is hiya, and one of the tenets of hiya is humility. Historically, women lead or led the Filipino household, just like the example from Dr. Roby, right? But it wasn't until Spanish colonization did women take the back seat, but not so much in a sense of doing less work, but still doing the hard work, but creating this guise that the man is the head of the household so as not to disturb the machismo that dominates Spanish culture. So I don't know about you, but that sounds totally backwards to me. If you're in charge, you're in charge, period, right? So there's this belief that one should be humble and avoid shame. And sometimes it's taken to an extreme in some cases. Like, who are you to correct an elder or a parent or grandparent or boss, right? You had like that. There's a saying that goes with like walang hiya, right? It's like you have no shame. So it puts you in this place of powerlessness, especially to one whom you feel an overwhelming sense of debt. And holding someone in that position of power over you may prevent you from speaking your mind, standing up for yourself, or simply asking for what you need. Another facet of hiya is smooth interpersonal relationships. Filipinos are often considered to be non-confrontational in order to maintain peace. I didn't get that memo. So there's this emphasis on how we are perceived by others. And that can be beneficial to a point, especially when it comes to accountability and showing this in the workplace and leading by example. However, this can run into people pleasing or perfectionism. So I see hiya as like a double-edged sword. You can also have this profound fear of losing face, a fear of public embarrassment, which then further pushes you to lay low, avoid raising your hands, avoid asking questions, or avoid applying for that leadership position, because our thoughts might be, what if I don't do it right? What if they laugh at me? What are they going to think of me? What if they think that I'm stepping out of my place? And one thing to remember about hiya and utang na loob is that you can be grateful and objective at the same time. It will save you from making bad decisions that are based just on blind loyalty. Like, for example, the concept of I love you and no. I wish I knew that concept a long time ago. And the example I will give you is one where I totally did it wrong. As a teen, growing up as a kid, one of my dad's mantras was, children obey their parents, right or wrong. And showing respect for your elders, obeying your parents can sometimes stifle your own voice, your own core values, so as not to offend, the ones from whom you've benefited. So my dad would make me go and buy him cigarettes as soon as I turned 18. Like, that was my chore to do, to go buy him. He would not get up off the couch to buy his own cigarettes. And I did. Blind loyalty, went and got it, even though in my heart and my soul, I knew this was the wrong thing to do. And it took me going away to college and then coming back after my first break when he asked me to do it again. And I just said no. And I did it wrong because at that time, was 18 or 19, I didn't yet have the vocabulary to elaborate the concept of I love you and no. I actually didn't even say I love you. I just said no. And that didn't go very well. So I ended up looking like this disobedient child, right? And my dad didn't talk to me for 3 days. Eventually, he did end up quitting. But after about 10 years of not smoking, he was actually found to have stomach cancer and ultimately passed away about 4 years ago at home with hospice. And so after his diagnosis, our relationship changed. We were able to have these goodbye talks, conversations we likely would probably not have had if he weren't sick. And I guess in a way I was lucky he didn't, pass so suddenly, as, some of our other panelists had talked about losing a loved one suddenly. You didn't get that opportunity, but I did. And I made a choice to try to use that opportunity in our relationships. And we had these conversations where he apologized for being so strict, for like not giving me a childhood. He said, I never grew up with a father. His dad was assassinated in the Philippines. He was in the government, it's like totally corrupt over there. He said, I never grew up with a father, so I didn't know how to be a father. And right or wrong, it was love. And I didn't know if he knew that I had already let go of that anger a long time ago. And it took a lot of courage for me to say out loud, because I'm not used to like talking about my feelings. It wasn't something that I learned growing up. It took a lot of courage for me to say out loud, it's okay, Papa. I'm not angry at you anymore. And this conversation was over the phone, and I could literally hear a weight being taken off of his chest. I could hear the happiness in his voice. He said, you don't know how happy that makes me. Thank you. Thank you for loving me back again. And what he was doing was he was attempting to smooth out our interpersonal relationship. And embedded within those conversations were all of the unspoken apologies, the not letting me go to away games when I, played high school volleyball, asking me why I got a B- instead of an A, expecting the perfect grades from his daughter who's supposed to become a doctor. So, we had these conversations at the end of life. Imagine what a relationship could have been like had I not half muted myself or my thoughts or my feelings while he was healthy, And so raise your hand if you had that experience of being expected to be that perfect daughter. Well, I can't see your hands, right? But you guys are like, there they are, right? So how do we manage that expectation of being perfect? So given that hiya is related to shame, I can't discuss shame without mentioning perfectionism. And I call perfectionism the sister of imposter syndrome. Thanks to Oxford and Webster, they give the following definition of the thought that anything short of perfection is unacceptable. Okay, here's the thing. In case you didn't know, newsflash, perfection does not exist. And these days, I often cringe when I hear it used as a compliment. It's so easily said, right? But when I hear that perfect, it feeds into that falsehood that perfection exists. I'm sorry. So again, fast forward a few decades, Brene Brown, who's a shame researcher, has a more profound definition. And she offers this: perfectionism is a self-destructive and addictive belief system that fuels this primary thought. If I look perfect and do everything perfectly, I can avoid or minimize the painful feelings of blame, judgment, and shame. And there's this belief that your worth hangs on this conditional acceptance. And in our Filipino culture of hiya, we try as much as possible to avoid shame. And sometimes you unconsciously prioritize what other people think about you instead of what you think about you. And then what you think about you isn't so great, right? And you put pressure on yourself to look capable lest anyone else think otherwise. And you may avoid change. You may avoid risk lest you provide a space for people to find out about the real you. And it's been mentioned before and with the other panelists that social media can create this shame spiral of comparison. You get lost in this time suck of scrolling and that feeling of I'm not good enough by looking at everyone's perfect feeds and highlights. So when you're careening through this shame spiral, how do you get out? So how do you overcome imposter syndrome? Well, it's a work in progress every day. I waffle between, okay, I'm proud of how far I've come. I'm grateful for everything that I have and that I worked for, versus who do I think I am and what in the world am I doing? Well, one place to start is representation. Emily Hu is a clinical psychologist at Pepperdine University in California. She says, we are more likely to experience imposter syndrome if we don't see many examples of people who look like us or share our background who are clearly succeeding in our field, right? And this is a shining example of the fact that representation matters, especially after the results of our last election, right? And the lack of role models for minorities or people of color has a major impact in making people feel like they do or they don't belong in these corporate environments. Growing up, I did not know one Filipino doctor, not one. The doctor I wrote about in my personal statement to get into medical school was puti. He was white. So this older white guy was my role model to become a doctor. So I wonder why growing up, becoming a doctor felt so unattainable. And then in college, I went to USC. Many aspiring physicians were Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, Indian, Malaysian. Many of my Filipino classmates were in the nursing program. So again, I often felt lost. So one of the first things in overcoming imposter syndrome is to try to generate those, connections, finding others who are vulnerable enough to share that they're experiencing similar thoughts and feelings. Hello, welcome to Pinays in Healthcare, right? This is it. This is one big step. This is one big chunk. And then once you foster those connections, then that develops into community, right? Either whether it be virtual or in real life. And social media is an excellent stepping stone to connection. And I say stepping stone because it's not a replacement for real life, right? Zoom is the safer route for now, but there's something to be said about those in real life connections in real time. As part of the Physician Moms group, we branched out into these local Physician Moms group on Facebook. And then before the pandemic, once a month, someone would have like a get together at like a bar or restaurant so that the moms could get together, after bedtime or whatever, or after, having their significant other or someone else, manage the kids while they step away for a moment to be with other women who are experiencing similar things and having similar thoughts of feeling like they're not doing enough, they're not good enough, or they're doing it wrong. And we are normalizing it. We are normalizing being human. And I think that's the main thing. When you normalize being human, it's okay. And you get to accept yourself for who you are. It also takes a lot of courage, right? And as you know, courage is not the absence of fear. It's being scared and doing it anyways, right? This culture is our lived experience, and we're so used to these Filipino cultures and values, it's kind of scary sometimes to step in a different direction. And last but not least, I cannot not talk about coaching. So coaching, whether it's self-coaching through podcasts or videos or a big group or a small group or one-to-one, coaching can help you practice that thought work that we mentioned a little bit at the beginning of the slides that help you manage your mind. And it was really eye-opening, and it is really eye-opening for me, and I highly recommend it. Therapy is great, life coaching is great. All of these things offer the possibility of continued progress to let go of the thoughts that don't serve you and gives you the power to choose the thoughts that will serve you and will help lead you to progress. I'm going to give you another quote by Brene Brown. She's like my spirit woman, right? She, in her book, Braving the Wilderness, has this quote, strong back, soft front, wild heart. So strong back, I think we're good at this. We have these strong core Filipino values, strong, soft front. We're good at this because we have this sense of hiya when we show up in the world. But for me, I had trouble with this wild heart part. Like my heart was raised to conform and obey. And I almost like, I feel like as if I've been stripped of the opportunity to mold and shape and follow my own curiosities to the point where I come to a stage in my life where it's popular to be curious and creative. And then I just hit this brick wall. And we live in this world where creativity and entrepreneurship are now placed on a pedestal. And all of that rote memorization I did and all of that obedience and following the straight path has now gotten me feeling stuck and stifled because I don't know any other way, or now you need to learn this new way. Good news though, in our younger generations, in our millennials, in our Gen Zs, it's a bit different because they're the ones who are breaking the molds, who are more curious, who put more value in mental health, who put more value in life work equilibrium, and leads us, again, towards progress. So I'm going to share with you some of the things that have helped me and are helping me now. As I said before, Brené Brown is my spirit woman. Any of her books are amazing. I started with The Gifts of Imperfection. I probably read that 3 or 4 times. And her books, Braving the Wilderness and Dare to Lead, are amazing as well. Present Over Perfect is another book by Shauna Niequist, who wrote this book. It's wonderful for those of you who are struggling or recovering perfectionists. And then the following podcasts. There's Empowering Women Physicians, hosted by Dr. Sunny Smith. And this is the program I'm currently in right now for life coaching. And Dr. Katrina Ubel, she's and the other coach that I mentioned earlier in my talk. And there's also Brooke Castillo. Brooke Castillo is not a physician, but she is the pioneer, or one of the pioneers in life coaching. She actually trained the doctors who coach in the Empowering Women Physicians group, as well as Dr. Katrina Ubel. And she just forged this multi-million-dollar business of life coaching. So highly recommend. And of course, I cannot end my talk without mentioning Dr. Jenny Fagel and the Grown Up Asian. She has this Instagram. And the last story I will leave you with is a few weeks ago during my life coaching program, I emailed the director, Dr. Sunny Smith, to see if there were any Asian American life coaches, as I was maybe considering the possibility of doing this like way down in the future. And her answer to me was there was a handful and there is always room. Literally the next week, I was approached by Christina about this summit and was introduced to these amazing panelists, including Dr. Jenny Fagel and Dr. Kathleen Wong, who have a life coach program, right? And so here we are, come full circle. I, and have come to meet and get connected with these amazing women physicians who are also life coaching, who are doing the thing, who are pioneers. I'm just so excited that they're doing this. So with that, I hope that was helpful. And I'll open to questions and discussion. Feel free to unmute yourselves. Let me see your faces. I didn't get to see any of the comments. Sorry, I don't know if my screen was probably not on full view.
So beautiful, Danielle. I love your story, and I think it's so important that you're talking about utang na loob and hiya, just to kind of jump into a little bit of pop culture. And guys, please feel free to cut me while I'm talking. I'm just going to be yapping or with Dr. Danielle over here, but also feel free to chat or leave your questions in the chat. But to jump into Filipino pop culture, I don't know if you all are familiar with Sarah Geronimo, who is this mega pop star in the Philippines. And it's very interesting that you talked about, blind loyalty and utang na loob, because with her story, Obviously she came from she had a very humble beginning. Her family was very simple. You know, when they would have meals, it would just be rice and salt. And then now she's this mega pop star in the Philippines, and she's well established, and she's famous, and now she has enough money, and her mom and dad are very much in control of her finances. And I think that's also very common because they came from a very, you know, they're very humble beginnings. And so they're very careful about how she uses her money, and the way her mom controls how it gets spent or where it goes is she gets to kind of decide who Sarah ends up dating. And so this became such a scandalous thing in the Philippines because every time Sarah would have a boyfriend, her mom would always kind of be in the news, and they would all be writing about how she mistreated the men that Sarah was dating, or she would say no, and she would be very like, everywhere Sarah went, she always had people with her. You know, there was never a time that Sarah was alone. It was very, I can only imagine, very suffocating. And what's very popular in the Philippines is how celebrities buy their parents' houses with the first kind of like paycheck that they get from being a celebrity, you know, actors, singers. And like you said, it can be a double-edged sword, because I think that's what makes Filipinos very special, that we think about our families and giving back to our parents especially, but hopefully not to the point where we feel like everything that we earn once we're kind of, you know, living independently has to go back to them, and then we forget to support ourselves along the way. But yeah, that's such a beautiful story, and something I think a lot of people can resonate with.
Thank you.
Anybody would like to ask Dr. Danielle or share your thoughts? Feel free to unmute yourselves, show yourselves on the videos, or chat. Leave your questions in the chat. I'm also going to be typing in questions that were sent in during the registration. So we can start off with this question, Dr. Danielle.
Mm-hmm.
As a Filipino healthcare professional, how do you reconcile your duty to country in the Philippines and your profession in the US? Or do you find this even a concern for you personally or professionally?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, as a second generation Filipino American, I might be a little bit more removed from it, but the way that I see it is I'm clearly Filipino. My last name is Manalo, right? So, you know, I definitely try to represent, you know, the Filipino values and cultures in a way that show us in a positive light. And at the same time, like, as we're in the talks from before, there is this stigma about mental health, and there is this, you know, stigma of sometimes making ourselves small when, you know, there's no need. So I think that's kind of like the way that I look at it. Or do you? So yeah, that was in terms of duty to country. I'm not sure if that answered the question appropriately, but that's my take on it.
All right. And somebody also asked, how do you overcome challenges involving career or life transitions, especially now, and thrive as a minority in healthcare?
So transitions are always hard, you know, whether it's a transition from medical school to residency to attending, and you know, even starting a new position somewhere else. I think one of the ways to overcome it is, again, to think about your thoughts and what you're making that mean. Yes, you're transitioning to a new space. Are your thoughts, oh my gosh, I don't belong here, nobody's going to like me, how am I going to fit in? And if you choose instead the thoughts of, I was chosen to be here I belong here. I can contribute. I have something to share. I can bring value to the company or group or profession, and I can be a positive representative of, Filipino culture and values, and I can share that. And no one else can do that except for you. So when you choose your thoughts that way, it can help serve you in your transition. But is it going to suck still? Yeah, it's going to suck. There's a saying like everything's 50-50. It's going to be hard. You're going to have to, meet new people and develop new connections and make new conversations with people you've never met and learn kind of the culture of that particular place that you join. But overall, there is still that opportunity to succeed and thrive, and making sure that you choose the thoughts that serve you will help, guide you to the right path, as opposed to, what am I doing here? I just keep messing up. I don't belong here. I don't know anything. I don't even know where the bathroom is, kind of thing. So just using those, being aware of your thoughts will kind of help guide you towards the right path.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned that transitions are always hard. When I first moved here, and in connection with the concept or the idea of Hia, I think I've always been pretty outspoken, even in the Philippines, and it's not always encouraged, which is funny. Again, it's part of our culture. And then when I came here, when I was dating my then boyfriend, who's now my fiance, Nathan, we went out on a date, and I think we ended up, we met with his friends at like a bar, and then we ended up going home at around, I don't know what time, but he asked me several times. He was like, are you okay? Do you want to go home? And I'm like, I'm okay. And then eventually he told me, here in America, we encourage people to be assertive. And so, you try to be, I think Filipinos try to always, we're very flexible. So wherever we are, we like to adapt to whatever culture or practices, depending on where we are in the world. So I think that's just funny. It's just funny that we carry that with us wherever we go. But yeah. Anybody else would like to ask Dr. Danielle any questions or connect? This is the perfect time to share your thoughts.
Feel free to reach out, on DMs as well, on my Instagram. You can find me there.
Yes, and Dr. Trish Ferrer, who is our last speaker, isn't here yet. So really now is a great time. Any thoughts, any questions?
How many of us are here currently? It's hard. I'm still on the screen share, so I don't see how many. Oh, there's 25. Okay.
Yes.
Where is everybody? Let's see your faces. Do you guys want to do a stretch? We can do like a 5-minute stretch. I mean, I could always do like 5-minute Tabata workout, whatever you guys want to do. Says, sitting down in one spot is not thriving. So let's just do like a 2-minute stretch, because we need to move our bodies, right? So y'all can turn on your screens. I don't care where you are. If you're in your pajamas, like literally I'm in my like workout leggings and my chinelas. All right. It's okay.
I have a blouse and like gym shorts. So,
There, Elizabeth, you ready? All right. Oh my gosh, you're going to hear me cracking. I'm like so old.
I love this.
Okay, so first we're just going to stand straight and tall, shoulders in line with our hips, standing in mountain pose, which is a common yoga pose. We're going to raise our hands above our heads, reach up to the sky, fold our fingers together and stretch it upwards, and then lean over to one side, keeping our shoulders and neck in line with our spine, really opening up your rib cage, turning towards the ceiling and holding that position and finding a spot between relaxation and effort. Take a few deep breaths here. And back up to neutral. And then we'll do the other side. So leaning over to the other side, again, keeping your neck, shoulders, and spine all aligned. Really opening up your rib cage and your side and your hip. Looking up towards the ceiling. Taking a few deep breaths. I'm assuming you don't often stretch out your rib cage. And back up. And then another stretch that's great to do, especially if you're doing a lot of computer or forward shoulder work, you can do this while you're seated or standing. Clasp your fingers together and bring your shoulders down and out. This is a great opener for your anterior shoulders. You want to try to squeeze your scapula together and hold it there. Really open up your chest, open up your shoulders. I hurt my shoulder during the pandemic, either from doing too much plyometrics and burpees and stuff, or from trying to mix sourdough by hand. Regardless, I totally messed up my shoulder and actually went through physical therapy for a couple of months to help my shoulder. And this was one of the things that was really helpful. All right. So back to neutral. Then we're going to stretch our neck a little bit. Take your hand, place it above your ear, and just gently stretch your neck to one side. Really open up those strap muscles of your neck. When we're staring at a computer all day, not so good for your neck. I'm tilted, so look at your posture, make sure you're standing straight up. And then we'll do the other side, standing straight and tall, reaching around for your ear and stretching your neck to the left side. Take a few deep breaths here and really just open up the side of your neck. Bring your shoulder down to help increase that stretch. Okay, and then let's do a couple of neck rolls in one direction. Really rotate it as far as you can. So 3 one way, slowly roll, 3 the other way. If you hear lots of cracking, that's okay. Or maybe that's just me. Raise your hands above your head again. And we're gonna do a forward fold. I don't know if you can see me, just bend at the waist and reach for your toes. Let your head hang down. You don't necessarily need to touch the floor, just whatever amount of flexibility you have is what's available to you just at this moment. And then back up and do a little bit of a back bend, supporting your back with your hands, and back to neutral. All right, there's a little quick stretch for you guys. Hope you enjoyed.
Thank you so much, Dr. Danielle.
You're welcome. Next time we'll do like a Tabata workout or something.
Yeah. Dr. Trish is just setting up. So I had texted her. I'm curious to know where you all found out about Pinays in healthcare. If you guys can like type it in the chat box. I'm always curious how this happens and how this turned out.
I actually found out about you guys just last night through the Grown Up Asian, and I saw Dr. Fago at it was the CFAM. It's Council of Young Filipino Americans in Medicine. We had a conference about, like, I think it was last month, and I'm just like slowly getting into this community, and it's so nice. I want to thank you all for putting this together and speaking. And as an aspiring physician and Filipina, it's really hard to find support. So thank you all.
No, thank you so much, Elizabeth. Yes, I remember your message. And I love how, I mean, I honestly didn't know that a lot of people, a lot of Filipinos here in the US lacked support and needed more people to look up to. Honestly, the reason why I gathered, all of these amazing panelists is because I wanted to learn from each of them. Selfish reasons, but at the same time, I also wanted to connect with other Filipinas, especially since I always, think that I'm kind of on my own here. So all my friends are back home. So I wanted to kind of like make new friends, even though it's gonna have to happen virtually. But yeah, I love connecting with people. I love meeting Filipinas, especially here. And I hope we have the chance to kind of like break that crab mentality that we're all so like unfortunately used to. I don't know, like Dr. Roby said earlier, it wasn't a term that she was familiar with because maybe her mom protected her from it. I don't know if it's more common for, people who were born and raised in the Philippines as opposed to Filipinos here. But I've definitely seen that a lot, especially since my mom's friends are here in the US too, and I hear a lot of stories, a lot of chismes, things like that. But yeah, I love everybody's like talking on the chat as well and saying it's a mix of Dr. Manipod's Instagram and Dr. Trish Ferrer's Instagram. And Sheena said, great talk, Dr. Manalo. I definitely felt those feelings this week, and it was a great reminder to remember that you're worth it, that are worth it in our professions. Beautiful talk, Dr. Danielle.
Thank you.
So it's a mix of
And Dr. Vanya just told me that her husband went to school with me, and
wow.
such a small world. I totally know who he is. Like I've been following her this whole time. Like, where is he?
That is so funny.
Oh my gosh, small world. I
It
can't believe.
really is like, this is a very close group, apparently.
Yeah. He was a year above me, I think.
That's so cool.
Oh my gosh, how funny. That's awesome. I love it. See, we're all connected. We're all related.
Yep.
We're all cousins. Tell me.
Yeah, exactly.
Telling you.
I know. I want to say, wasn't Vania, wasn't my sister-in-law your college roommate?
Wait, what? Who?
Sean?
Oh, wait, hold on. I can't see who's talking because I have the wrong view.
Oh, it's me. It's Kat.
Oh, Kat.
Yeah.
Wait, what did you say again, Kat?
Isn't Sean your college roommate?
Yes.
Yeah, and so Sean is my sister-in-law.
And I know. And then your brother was my big bro from the Little Sis.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Funny.
Yeah, really small world.
Very
Seriously.
small world. We're all connected, I'm telling you.
I love it. So Dr. Otina said, I'm actually Vietnamese and found this summit so insightful and relatable. Thank you for this and the amazing vulnerable stories. Oh my gosh, thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for being here. Kiara found out about this, via the Grown Up Asian as well. Awesome. And Maria said, I follow Doctors Vania and Dr. Trish Ferrer. I'm Dr. Maria Delmar. Thank you so much for being here. I love that. And Melanie said, Dr. Trish Ferrer. And so Trish just messaged me and said, okay, she's almost ready, but just give it a few minutes, guys. Thank you so much for being very patient. Dr. Danielle, how are you so fit? Look at that picture in the middle with abs.
So that was like right around when the pandemic started, before I discovered sourdough. Like before that, I was definitely more low carb. And then I discovered sourdough and, I probably gained a few pounds since then. I'm still, mindful about what I do and what I make. And when I make something, I actually just, have a few slices and then share it with everyone. Let me just show you. I'll show you what I just made right now.
Okay.
You want to see my kitchen?
Yes.
Okay. So today or yesterday I made this. I already put it in a Ziploc to share and like bring to work. This is like banana bread.
I
Okay,
love
this.
bread.
I made sourdough banana bread. And then this is my sourdough.
Oh my gosh, that looks amazing.
I have to slice it still, but this is just a plain one because my boys like the plain version. I like to put stuff in my sourdough, like walnuts and olives and feta and cheese and jalapeno and all of the things.
My mouth is watering. I'm so hungry.
Bourbon, chocolate, dates. Go back into my thing. So, yeah, I love creating in the kitchen because, when Dr. Roby had mentioned, she loves surgery, like I actually really enjoyed my surgery rotation, but the OR just wasn't, for me. So I really like working with my hands. And so being able to create in the kitchen is something that I could do that's completely different from medicine.
Right.
That I can share. It's my creative outlets, it's my stress.
Don't you dare worry about it, about being nervous, my love.
Oh. Oh, so I'll put stop share.
Oh, you can go ahead and do it. Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, you guys, thank you again for everything.
Dr.
If you have
Danielle,
questions.
Thank you so much. I think Dr. Trish will be with us in just a short while. Yes, Kiara, I also didn't know that bread could be so beautiful. Fun fact, I love being around bread. I know that sounds weird, but if I go to the grocery, that's like the one aisle I like staying in because it smells so good and I love bread. All right. I wonder if anybody is listening in from the Philippines. Is anybody? So I know right now in Manila it's around 8:42 a.m. I guess everybody is here in the US, I'm assuming. I think before Dr. Trish Ferrer steps in, I'm gonna introduce her. I'm pretty sure a lot of you already know her since I've seen on the chat that a lot of you found out about this summit because you found it on her Instagram page. So I'm gonna just go ahead and introduce her. Dr. Trish Ferrer is a naturopathic doctor and a San Diego native. Over the years, she has created awareness and education, particularly on Instagram, surrounding naturopathic medicine, holistic health, clinical nutrition, mind-body medicine, and healing modalities such as botanicals, homeopathy, and body work. Her passion to educate about whole and full body medicine by ways of trying mental and emotional and spiritual health has led her to be a featured speaker on podcasts and organizations. So back in the Philippines, we don't really have osteopathic and naturopathic doctors. So this is definitely a first for me. And I'm all learning with you guys. Okay, she just messaged me and said coming. There we go.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, so nice to finally meet you virtually at least.
Yes, thanks, Doc. I appreciate it. Are you guys still doing your stretching exercises?
No, we finished, and I hope you don't mind. I went ahead and introduced you.
Oh, not at all. I've actually been sitting here just trying to breathe. So this is my first talk on a summit, like a conference or an organization as a doctor. I've done a lot of this stuff as a student, and so now doing it at this level feels a little bit different. So anyway, I've been doing like breathing exercises. My partner and I have been like gassing each other up this whole time. So yeah, so it's good. But thank you for the intro, and we can start whenever you guys are ready. How is everyone doing today?
You guys can. We were actually
good.
Dr. Danielle just showed us her kitchen, all the sour bread dough.
Beautiful.
She made sourdough bread rather. But yeah, we're so excited to hear you speak.
Yay. Well, I will get set up here. Can I screen share?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. I can screen share. Okay, just give me 1 second, everyone. Oh no, what happened? Okay, here. My facial expressions at this point need to be illegal.
You look beautiful.
Thank you. All right, you guys. Well, this is the last talk of the summit. Let me present this actually. So this is the last talk of the summit. It's been a long day. It's been beautiful, Christina. Thanks for putting all of this together and having all of us come together and talk about all of this glorious stuff and culture. When Christina asked me to do this summit, I was a little bit nervous. And when I was creating content and putting together material for this talk, there was a little part of me that kind of felt like a traitor. And that just goes to show how deeply ingrained and embedded some of these toxic traits from our culture into this generation and so on and so forth. So again, my name is Trish Ferrer. I'm a naturopathic doctor here in San Diego, and I'm going to be addressing toxic Filipino culture. I have some notes here, so if you guys see me look down, I swear I'm not ignoring or trying to avoid anything, just looking down so I don't miss anything. So let's get started. Okay. So at first I was going to create this very elaborate PowerPoint addressing all of the things, but then I realized it's been a long day. It's the last talk. Everyone's been sitting at their computers on Zoom the last few hours. Let's just all take a step back, just relax, tune in, and just listen to the conversation that we're going to have today. And so I just want to start by showing some pictures of me then and now. So this is me on the left. I think I'm 2 years old here, and I was born with the name Patricia Denise Bornafel Ferrer. These are my parents. I'm an only child. My mom on the left is Caroline. She's Chinese. And my dad on the right, his name is Rene, and he's fully Filipino. My mom grew up in Valenzuela, and my dad was in Makati. So it's been very interesting. I was born in the Philippines. I grew up in the Middle East and then came to the States for school. So I'm a child of an immigrant family and first generation naturopathic doctor. I really love doing talks like this because I have conversations like this all the time with people within the community or even keen observers of the culture. And I broke all of the rules. So I find it interesting that I get to talk about all of the stuff that is based off of my own personal experience and the experience of others. So let's start off by talking about what toxic Filipino culture is. So what we used to think toxic Filipino culture is when everyone would get together and talk about it was Filipino time. So need to be at an event by 5 p.m. You're showing up at 6:30. You're chronically late to everything. The mañana habit, so leaving stuff to go tomorrow, and then tomorrow comes, and then that's tomorrow, and then that tomorrow comes, and then that becomes tomorrow again. Or bahala na, so whatever happens will happen. But now with young people modernizing psychology and trying to understand the depths of one's own cultural psyche, we can now see and address all of these degrading behaviors and toxic traits that we have disguised as part of the culture. So a really big one now that we're trying to talk about, normalize, and try to rationalize a little bit is this idea of crab mentality, where it comes from, how it's bred, and how it's continued to perpetuate in all of our communities. And it comes from the core of our being, which is in the family. So if you guys have never seen crabs in a bucket, this is what it looks like. I saw this really cool infographic online, so I wanted to add this, but instinctively, when you focus on crabs in a bucket, they all want to get out, right? So each crab tries to get out, but instinctively, they pinch each other and pull them back down. So it's this idea of, you know, if you can't have it, I can't have it. If you can't do this, if I can't do this, you can't do this. If I can't do something, therefore you cannot do something either. So you belong down here with us. So this crab mentality circulates around the Filipino community a lot. And just a disclaimer, it's really easy to blame our elders in this specific space, you know, because they were the ones who taught us all of this behavior. And then people who are keen observers from the culture may wonder why the advocacy for youth and youth development may be absent or just missing in all of this stuff. But what people don't understand and what they might not know is that complete submission to the family hierarchy is so ingrained and so expected. So it's considered an act or an act of rebellion to speak up or out or against anything that may have hurt us or anything that has hindered us. So what can we do? How can we learn to be confident enough to use our voices so that all of the stuff that has slowly silenced us and all of the projected behaviors that have been put on us can break and we can continue creating a new cycle for the new generations to come? So not so subtle subtleties. These are some sound bites that I have heard over the years and that are honestly quite comical and some of my favorites, right? Because, you know, you're figuring out your cultural identity within your group and your community, and the only people that you can do that with are usually your family. With the nostalgia of the holidays, going over to Tita's house, you have your loud effusive titas, your drunk titos, you see your cousins who are amazing. But then you have all of these sound bites, and this is the slow diet that you've been fed throughout the years. So some of my favorites, hoy, tumaba ka. Hey, you've gained some weight. Why don't you just be a nurse like your cousin? Arts, fine arts, God, you're so pretty, anak. Why don't you just be a model and be famous? How will you make money if you're doing X career, right? All of these sound bites are easily identified by everyone in the Filipino community, especially, you know, now with all the memes that are circulating, social media, all of them satirical in nature. And while they serve this purpose of being really humorous, could these sound bites and these points of conversation be a coping mechanism and as a tool for unconscious Filipinos to hide and continue to get stuck and caught in this ever-flowing cycle of these harmful behaviors and toxic traits? So all of these points of conversations continue on throughout the generations. Therefore, the behavior being modeled in the current environment. And so when we're talking about youth development and growing up with this and breaking this cycle, how can we stop that and change the environment? Because the impact of mental, emotional, spiritual health and well-being when it comes to youth and their cognitive development is this idea of a slow diet of shame and unworthiness being fed slowly growing up, therefore leading to this rise of the inferiority complex. And cultivating this kind of environment with these conditioned modes of thinking for young people will rob us from being able to experience each other fully and authentically, but also being able to experience ourselves fully and authentically. So, which is why an intergenerational conversation needs to take place when we're talking about culture and breaking the cycle, because it takes a great amount of bravery and acknowledgement to be able to talk about the depth of these toxic behaviors and how we can change them, because all of this attitude extends way below the surface. So what can we do if we want to share mutual perspectives, but also feel safe about talking about all of the things that have hurt us or hindered us? This is not easy to do, especially when you have this very solid family hierarchy of the elders when they're up here, and their authority feels like they're being threatened. And then you have the young people here who will act in defensiveness as a knee-jerk response to this. So then this continuous deflection will only perpetuate the separation of the intergenerational gap. But here's the thing, it's really simple. If we really break this down and get to the root cause of it, all we need is a little bit of courageous communication that involves trading points of views rather than opposing points of views, and all of that centering around one's humanity. So closing the gap, we've talked a little bit about cognitive development and in psychology and everything that we're learning, especially in mental health, with everything that's being perpetuated online and all of the self-help things. We are learning that humans will tend to mimic the environment that they're currently in order for this perceived growth and survival. There's a reason why these habits have been perpetuated for so long, and it's because of this chronic exposure that we think is normal. This process of change is nonlinear, will take a lot of time, and will need continued resistance to inspire change. And in addition to this continuous critical conversation between generations, accountability and responsibility for one's actions, words, and emotions become key players to shifting these perspectives from being toxic to problem solving. And it's gonna take the commitment of everyone in the family and everyone in the community. I'm talking moms, dads, titos, titas, lolos, and lolas, to be able to challenge one another, uplift themselves so much that they become role models for their children in a challenging way, but maybe also being role models for themselves or the role models that they needed when they were young. And then on the flip side, being able to challenge the youth in ways that fosters growth, safety, and love, rather than something being really passive aggressive or one-sided chismes, which is gossip. And really vague and interesting social media memes and Facebook statuses. I mean, if you're Filipino and you have a large family, you know what that's like. At the same time, the youth and all of the young people, sisters, brothers, cousins, need to be able to verbalize the behaviors that are happening, communicate the problems that are being played, embrace their vulnerability, express all of their truths with conviction, and honestly, just check in with one another. This idea of breaking the cycle and closing the gap requires actively resisting what we have learned to be part of the culture. So in my personal experience, doing things like saying, I'm sorry more, or I love you more, or I forgive you more, or you're more than capable of doing this and I believe in you more. Saying you're beautiful more and I'm grateful for you more. hugging more, loving more, just being able to extend each other more in this environment to create more safety, more communication, and more love. So that instead of having this crab mentality where we pull each other down all the time, we could just have this instead. Everyone's winning. And I just want to end the talk, you guys, by saying I have a little bit of my own soundbite here when I was writing this, to remember that when people, even the ones who say that they love you the most, and they do, albeit maybe a little bit misguided sometimes, if they undermine your dreams, predict your doom, or criticize you, they're telling you something about their story, not yours. So it's time to create your own story and join this conversation. And that's the end of my talk. Maraming salamat, everyone. Thank you for coming. Again, my name is Trish Ferrer, and I'm a naturopathic doctor in San Diego.
Thank you so much. That was such an amazing talk, Dr.
Thank you.
I love, so it's funny that, or not funny, but it's so interesting that you picked toxic Filipino culture as that topic, because back in the Philippines, there's actually like this Facebook group, or I think like Facebook page that's dedicated to all these examples of toxic Filipino culture, like especially with family.
Yeah.
It's so unfortunate because it's so common, and it's not something that a lot of people actually always have the courage to speak up about, because we're scared that we're going to be like rebellious, come up as rebellious to our parents, or you know, disobedient.
Yeah.
And curious to know, you said you broke all the rules.
Oh yes.
Tell us.
I'll tell you a big one. I'm a naturopathic doctor, for God's sake, instead of being a regular doctor. That's a big one. That's a really big one. So
How?
God broke all the rules. I mean, so this is my parents and I now. Obviously, we're very joyful. We're very close now, but there was a time where being in my family was very difficult for me because I often felt very misunderstood and unseen. I'm not really sure what it was about my personal DNA makeup or my genetics, but I've always been a little bit more of a free thinker and outside the box, while my parents have always been a little bit more linear. And I think maybe my spirit was just rebelling against that. And I've always been very, very curious. And so, you know, asking questions was never a thing, even expressing emotions, you know, because emotions was, I don't want to go I don't want to say like emotions are synonymous with weakness necessarily, but it was just kind of like, if I would cry or emote or try to express something, it was immediately shut down. But then I did that more. And then, you know, when I'm in high school, I've moved to a totally different country, the States. I'm experiencing culture shock. I'm experiencing adaptation and assimilation with white people and, you know, this kind of American culture. I was doing everything that they did not want me to do. I was going out with friends, staying out late. I was doing all of the parties. And then when it came time to pick a career, I had been flirting with, you know, this idea of being a physician for a long time, but it was really about my own belief in myself. And I didn't really have that growing up, because growing up, my mom, in her own ways, was more focused on my image and the way that I looked and how I could make money and a living off of that. Whereas my dad was a little bit harder on me with academics. And so I've always been in the realm of academia, but it was never really enough, you know? And so I had that inferiority complex of, there's no way that I would be able to survive or thrive as a doctor. There's no way that I could heal people. There's no way that I could use my voice, because I couldn't even express or use my voice with my family. How could I do this for myself? You know, and kind of leaning into them so much. So I think when, you know, to answer your question about breaking all the rules, that's a really big one. Breaking the rules in terms of saying no to what my parents wanted me to do and following my own path. And that was very difficult. There were a lot of tears. There was even a time where I didn't speak to my dad for 3 months because I was so hurt by him and just the way that he was treating me as a daughter and as, you know, an ever evolving woman. But I will say that once I got into naturopathic school, a lot of things changed. It's almost like they took me seriously or something. And then when they started seeing how joyful I was in naturopathic school and how connected I was to this form of medicine and what I was doing and what I want to do, they really softened and started to like trust that and started to see me as an adult and as someone who could take care of myself. And, you know, but it's interesting though, because there still is a small part of me that is kind of like, is this okay, mom and dad? Like, am I doing the right thing, mom and dad? So being able to cultivate my own inner voice without them has been a little bit of a challenge, but we're getting there.
I agree with you because I was born and raised in the Philippines, and I feel like coming here to America on my own was a huge leap for me because it's not independence in the Philippines is not always encouraged. Sometimes it can be confused with, like I mentioned earlier, rebellion. And I think me coming here maybe came off as me being a little bit rebellious, but at the same time, I felt like I was just doing myself a favor and feeding my independence. But now that I found or really like come full circle, like my independence is like at its peak, like you mentioned, you can't help but like think at the back of your head or your mind or even ask it out loud. Is this okay? Am I, mom, is this okay? Like, you know what I mean? I think it's ingrained still. But yeah, I love that. I love how you kind of opened your talk with like, you broke all the rules. It's really funny.
Oh yeah. I mean, you know, we'll have our family gatherings now and we'll talk about things and kind of laugh about things, that all the antics that I was up to at that time. But, you know, if you look at the deeper issues, it was more about because I was feeling oppressed,
right?
You know, as a child and feeling oppressed in like X, Y, and Z ways. There's always a root cause to all of this stuff, you know?
Absolutely. And Dr. Danielle, would you like to ask your question or would you want me to read it out? Dr. Danielle asked,
Oh, so I put, where did it
Hi,
go?
Dr. Danielle.
Hi there. Nice to see you. Thank you for your talk. It was awesome. I think we need to have these conversations more often. They're difficult conversations, and the only way you can get through them is to actually have them and do it. So sorry, I totally thought the pictures were like one picture, and I didn't notice that they were two photos, and I thought that middle person.
Yep, they're two photos. This middle person is actually a complete stranger. This isn't me.
So like when you're having those conversations with someone, if you're in a situation where somebody makes a comment about your appearance, what is your response?
Makes a comment about my appearance in terms of like my ethnic background or in terms of beauty, or what do you mean?
So so in terms of beauty, like you remember how your mom had said, or somebody had said,
you're so pretty, you should just blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So I think, you know, it's been a while since I've gotten comments like that. Obviously, those are more about sound bites growing up, but I think at the time, you know, image is one thing, and I think growing up, there was a part of me that knew that you know, image isn't everything, right? The physical aspect of everyone can kind of get you one place, but it's more about like the depth and the substance, and what you have to offer will create the legacy that you're leaving, or what you want to do in the world, or the gifts that you had to offer. And I have always felt that way. And I think maybe that was like an instinctual act of rebellion, was to like push back against this thing of image and be like, well, I'm smart, I have like gifts to offer. Like, why is it that I cannot be X, Y, and Z instead of just being a model? And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, part of my experience and my story is that, you know, we flirted with that for a while in my family, but it was very unfulfilling for me because I knew that I had something else to offer. And in my spirit, I knew I had more to offer rather than just this.
Thank
Because
you.
this will go. It's just about the voice and the story and the gifts that you have to offer and how you're going to heal individuals or the world.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Oh, Christina, you're muted.
I'm so sorry. Clearly, I'm good at this.
It's okay. It's a Zoom thing.
Thank you, Dr. Danielle and Dr. Trish. In the
Mhm.
chat, Tina had said, how did you deal with your parents' judgments and commentary on becoming a naturopathic doctor?
Oh, that's a long story. Do we have like some wine ready? Like, where are the tissues? We can all cry about it. You know, looking back, I'll just open it up with saying, looking back, I think I could have told them about it in a better way. So here's the thing. I got into naturopathic school and DO school at the same time. And so my parents were very in the know about DO school, but not really in the know about ND school. I kind of like told them a little bit about it, but they were like, this is witch doctor stuff, blah, blah, blah. Do you really want to do this? Yada, yada, so on and so forth. But come time for admissions, I completely dropped DO school and turned in my admission for ND school and was already getting ready to head to San Diego. So when I told them about it, it was very shocking. And shocking in the sense of like, they felt like I was hiding from them, that I had lied to them, and that I didn't go over it with them. And then there were a lot of tears. My parents were very unhappy. My mom very angry, and my dad a little bit more reserved and kind of more observant of the situation. They did not handle it well. Therefore, I did not handle their response well. And so I was kind of in this place of, why don't you believe in me? You know, I can
He
do
looks
this.
like a Tito, or what's that guy's name from
My dad. Yeah. Why don't you believe in me? Why can't I do what I want to do? This is my mission. This is my spirit calling. But, you know, they didn't really understand that. And my parents don't really understand that. They don't really have a concept of this idea of passion fueling purpose. And that's okay, because that's a generational thing. When our parents grew up, they went to school, went to work, made money, came home, family, kids, rinse and repeat. But we did not grow up that way. So we're very privileged in the sense that like we can grow up and decide who we want to be and what we want to do with our lives. So they did not handle it well. When I moved to San Diego to start my first year of school, they were somewhat supportive, but I think that the more I started to share my journey with them and how happy they would see me was when they really started to trust the process. And that maybe wasn't until like 2 years ago. So my third year in naturopathic school. And now that I'm graduated, they're like, oh, you're a doctor now. Yay. You know, so it's a funny thing. It's all gradual.
Right. And it's always like hard for people to, or at least our parents to accept what we want to do in life. There's a line from, sorry about the background noise, that's my dog, but a line from the movie Crazy Rich Asians where they kind of laugh at the whole, oh, you're kind of like trying to fuel your passion. It's like laughable concept, you know what I mean? But yeah. And do you have another question from Angie on the chat? She's asking, how do you co-manage and mesh with other people in the medical community as a naturopath? She's speaking as a Filipina chiropractor.
Oh, yay, chiropractic, one of my favorites. Um, to be honest, I have had very positive experiences with people in the medical community. I think that there's something about this generation and the generation coming up in terms of people in the healthcare field that are becoming more intertwined than ever. I think people are becoming more and more open to this idea of like full body medicine and whole body medicine and holistic health and clinical nutrition, psychology, psychiatry, mental, emotional health. Like people are slowly becoming in tune and aware of what the concept of spiritual health is, this idea of oneness. I've had many conversations with MDs, DOs, LACs, dentists, people in, a more traditional medical setting. And everyone has been very positive and open. I have not had many negative experiences, maybe just a few people trying to like degrade a few things. But, that same argument can be made with people in a traditional medical setting as well, like DOs, for example. So anyway, NDs will empathize a lot with the fight that DOs have had to go through and continue to go through, because we are also going through the same fight to like an nth degree, because we're kind of becoming more, I guess, like popularized in society now. So as society continues to like ever evolve, so will this medicine, and so will its solidification in the current healthcare system.
I love that. And you had questions from the registration form. Somebody asked, how do you cultivate and nurture a non-toxic, healthy culture that is more inclusive of our current environment during the social, civil unrest going on in our own community?
I think that all boils down to healthy and conscious and calm communication, which can be really difficult because a lot of people in the culture, especially when crowd mentality is so ingrained, can have a difficult time voicing how they feel and even knowing how to express and how to voice. I mean, I'm turning 30 in a few months, and I feel like this is the first time I'm really learning how to express myself in a way that people can understand. So I would say to express as much as you can, even if it's messy or if it's not perfect or not proper, especially in the current environment that we're in 2020. Who knows what 2021 will be like with administration and stuff with COVID, but also Black Lives Matter and getting rid of anti-Blackness in the Filipinx community. I think, and also having conversations with opposing views, I think is really important, so that can help widen your perspective and show you how privileged you are and how much of a bubble that you're living in. So communicate frequently and as freely and as much as possible.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because oftentimes we'll limit ourselves to, following people on social media with the same views as us, and that limits kind of our perspective. But if, like you said, we have conversations with people who have opposing views as us or as we do, then that just puts everything into a different perspective. So thank you for sharing that. And lastly, what's the best response you provided to somebody, or like a patient, for example, that put you down about being an ND?
So I will say that I have been very lucky in the sense that I haven't really had that many people or patients specifically put me down, because when I have seen patients, they are seeking naturopathic care. They want to be cared for by a naturopathic doctor. I have gotten into a few debates about naturopathic medicine, naturopathy, and kind of how that ties into evidence-based medicine. And I think the way that I always go is the medicine speaks for itself. You should try it before you judge it. And there's a reason why this form of medicine has been around for so long. It's because it works, just like chiropractic, just like traditional Chinese medicine, just like herbalism. all of this stuff is rooted in this idea of ancient wisdom. And so give it a shot if you're curious, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, then we'll try something else.
Absolutely. And if anybody else has any other questions for Dr. Trish, please feel free to like unmute yourselves, show yourselves on screen, or if you're too shy, you can just like type the questions in the chat. So yeah, just feel free to jump in at any point.
Everyone's ready for happy hour and Sunday fun day at this point.
Yeah, so if anybody or nobody else has any other questions, I just want to say thank you so much, Dr. Trish Ferrer, for taking the time to be with us today. I really appreciate it. Everybody, like all our panelists who joined us for the weekend, I know you guys are so busy, but this means a lot to the Filipino community, the Filipina community here in the US especially. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I can't wait to see how the summit continues to grow and your journey being an IMG. Woo!
Yes. Oh my gosh, struggling, but I'm trying to just like
getting
work
there. You know, they don't call it a youth smile for nothing. No one's smiling.
That's true. Thank you so much, Dr. Danielle. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You are a pioneer. Like getting all of us together is like an act of God. Like this is like a miracle for me to like be here and sit and learn from all of these amazing women, and meeting all of you has just been so life-giving. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I see Dr. Vania that's still in what part of the participants. Thank you, Dr. Vania, for being here. And I hope to continue bringing more recognition and acknowledgement to other Filipinas in different practices in healthcare around the world, not just here in the US. And yeah, this concludes the summit. I really appreciate, again, I know I keep saying this, but I really do appreciate everybody's time and the effort that you put into making this summit a success. Yeah, Tina said, especially during a pandemic. Thank you so much, everybody. And I hope you all have a wonderful week ahead and a lovely Sunday evening. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.